Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
with our old pal Josh Wilkie working on the cameras in the virtual production hauler. After 2 rounds and 4 35-minute long races, this 7th season of the miniMite Sportscar Challenge continues at one of the most storied motorsports facilities in the world. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway needs no introduction, but in the wide context of motorsports, the 2.5-mile oval usually takes precedence over the 2.4-mile-long road course. Originally constructed back in 2000, it hasn't seen too much use, at least compared to the 2.5-mile oval that we all know and love. However, it's hosted some fantastic events over the years, of course, host to the Formula One United States Grand Prix from the year 2000 all the way up until 2007, various IndyCar races, sometimes 2 or even 3 a year from 2014 up until the present day. It also held some NASCAR races back in the early stages of this current decade that we find ourselves in, and of course the host of the SDK runoffs back in 2017 and 2021. This track is absolutely fantastic and a unique ride in the world of motorsports. Not a whole lot of elevation change should be expected coming to a roval inside of an oval. Don't really see too much elevation change unless you count Charlotte, but hey, we don't really count the Charlotte Roval here on this broadcast, just for posperity's sakes. But the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course is still a very interesting ride in the world of racing, and these drivers are going to be tackling a whole lot of challenges for the 2 35-minute races that we have to look forward to here this evening on Apex Racing TV. And this is going to be a very interesting ride for all of us. Full transparency, folks, I'm in the midst of recovering from a cold, so doing 2 hours solo on a broadcast is probably not what the doctor had in mind, but hey, it's what the doctor ordered here on Apex Racing TV tonight, and we're going to have a whole lot of fun. This series, really all of the Ricmotech series, are usually fantastic races from start to finish, and this series has been no different. Got 3 classes to worry about and 2 different types of cars, the LMP3 category, along with GT4 Pro and GT4 AM. And I think, speaking of that, while we're still in the midst of this practice session, we should probably take a look at the championship points before we head off into qualifying. Got a 15-minute long session in front of us, about to get started in a couple of moments' time. This championship has been pretty short thus far, but it's been pretty entertaining to watch as well. Tyler King, who won one of the first races of the season at VIR, he's currently in the championship lead in the LMP3 category, currently at 131 points, only 3 in front of Joshua Vidal in P2. Bobby Childs in the number 88 car, fittingly on 88 points. He is slotted in 3rd in the LMP3 category. There you can see the rest of the runners. Not a whole lot of participation in the LMP3 class, it must be said. However, we do have some more drivers in that class that we're going to talk about later on this broadcast. Moving on to GT4 Pro now, and it is incredibly close in this category as well. Robert Hartley in the number 3 car for Orion Racing. He's currently at the top, 118 points on the board. Right behind him is his teammate Travis Schwanke, only 3 points behind as well, and only 3 points behind him is Eric Violet for D2D Sim Racing. The number 89 driver has been putting on a pretty good result so far this season. Dan Carrito and Leo Dragata going to round out your top 5 in the GT4 Pro standings. Very early on into the season, however, you can still see the drivers that have had a fantastic start to this 7th season. Gotta get the GT4 AM standings loaded up in just a couple of moments' time. And it's one of the other Dragatas, Lucas Dragata, leading in that category as well. Bit of a big cushion between himself and Chuck Labano, who's slotted in P2. Dragata has 115 points on the board in the GT4 AM category compared to Labano's 72. However, it's a close fight between Chuck Labano and Tom Jenkins, who slotted in 3rd in the number 68 car. He's only 69 points on the board and only 3 points back of Labano in 2nd. John Sterling and Andre Wedderburn going to round out your top 5 in the GT4 AM standings very early on into this season, it must be said. However, we are looking to have some fantastic championship fights between now and the end of this season, even in the teams championship as well. Looking pretty interesting. Aerokinetics currently at the top of the board, 131 points on the board. Phantom Power Racing behind in P2 at 128. Orion Racing Team, Dragon Sport Racing, and D2D Sim Racing going to round at your top 5. And there I can see the SCCA Foundation, driven by Jeff Jacobs, who I think we may be able to drag in the commentary booth later on. Jeff, who I've known for many years. I remember first really getting a chance to have a conversation with him back in 2016. The both of us are alumni of the Philadelphia region of the Sportscar Club of America. Very nice gentleman. And it's actually The main source in getting me started in broadcasting, I saw him there a little bit farther down in the team's championship, and he's always pretty fast. In this series, you'll see him in the GT4 category throughout tonight's procedure here from the Ricmotech miniMite Sportscar Challenge. Currently 2.5 minutes on the board in this qualifying session at the moment. We're following Dan Corrido in the Saints and Sinners Racing Porsche. He's heading his way off into the chicane right now towards the middle sector of the circuit, turns 5 and 6. Really tough. Gonna ride on board with him a little bit to get a good idea as to how the ride is around this racetrack. Whole lot challenge packed into this track. Despite being only 2.439 miles long, it is still a hoot to drive around, and you can see it a lot. We just saw it a couple of weeks ago. Actually, I believe it was not this past weekend, but the weekend before, with the battle at the Brickyard. Sadly, I was mixed up with broadcasting commitments, so I couldn't see that race. However, seeing some sports car action around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is always fantastic to see. One of the tracks I've visited in real life as well. It's a wonderful edifice, a fantastic facility, and I guarantee that once the museum opens back up in a couple years, I will be making another trip out to Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But the drivers are racing some qualifying times on the board in the GT4 Pro category. Zach Mosley, the reigning champion, currently at the top at a 1:30.397, so we'll see how that lap time stacks up in the rest of this qualifying session. In LMP3, it's Johnson leading at the moment. He's at a 1:21.986, so we'll see how things shake out for him in the GT4 AM category. Meanwhile, it's David Klimovich leading in that class at the moment. There's Adam Johnson leading it overall, the Wrong Stuff driver, currently putting on something right at the moment, so even though his team name is the Wrong Stuff, he's got the right stuff on the racetrack at this point in time. Not a big margin between himself and Josh Vidal, it must be said. However, I'm sure he is going to try and work to extend that gap between now and the end of this qualifying session. There's Josh Vidal in the number 26, and I should remind folks who are maybe tuning into the series for the first time, we got a 15-minute long qualifying session and 4 laps for these drivers to get it done. They have the racetrack all to themselves, and they are going to be enjoying that clean air, because come time for the 35-minute races where we're expecting to have the GT4 cars get lapped twice by the LMP3s, we are going to be in for a world of action. Take a quick little break. Remember, folks, always have to hydrate on these broadcasts here on Apex Racing TV. Following Neil Weston in the HTPK racing car, currently second in the GT4 AM category. Will he be able to jump in front of David Klimovich? He's about 4/10 in front of him. He won't be able to. However, he will get a little bit closer. Klimovich improving to 1:30.5 as Weston improves to 1:30.793. Meanwhile, in the LMP3 category, that's a nice jump up from King. He's going to be jumping up to the front of this qualifying order as it stands at the moment. Right behind him is going to be Beaver, and there's Tyler King in that Aero Kinetics car, a driver who I don't really recognize from running in previous seasons. He went out guns blazing and won one of the first races of the season for the first round of the championship at VIR about a month and a half ago here on Apex Racing TV. But we got a whole lot of drivers running in the LMP3 category. Really nice to see a little bit more participation in that class. I gotta say, one of the drivers currently slotted P2 is Aaron Beaver in the number 97 car, and he's actually making a change for this round. He was running in the McLaren in the GT4 category. However, the D2D sim racing driver has made the decision to switch back to the LMP3s. He was an LMP3 driver last season here from the Ricmotech miniMite Sports Car Series, back when it was called just the Ricmotech Sports Car Series. So right now, at this point in time, maybe possibly trying to get acclimatized to this LMP3 race car yet again. However, he has a whole season of experience from just one season ago, so I'm sure it won't be too steep of a learning curve, and we may be able to have a chat with him once he's done with his qualifying laps. We'll touch on that in just a couple of moments' time, but the driver still setting lap times on the board is still Tyler King at the front at LMP3. Zach Mosley to be a bit more precise, in the Mercedes. He's still leading in GT4 Pro at a 1:30.195, and in the GT4 AM category, it is still David Klimovich. Meanwhile, this is Dale Maxwell running fourth in the GT4 AM category, coming around the final corner in the 311 Porsche. Will it be an improvement from him to slip his way up the running order just a little bit? If he can shave a half a second off, that would be a big gain for Maxwell coming across the line now, and it's not an improvement. He must have had an off track that past lap, as a 1 minute 40.879 is not a good lap time at all, so maybe some sort of issue running Dale Maxwell's way during that previous lap that he just set. Not a whole lot of time left for these drivers to try and get some lap times on the board. Got about halfway to go on that 15-minute long clock. However, some of these drivers don't have a whole lot of time laps-wise to try and get it done. Of course, as I mentioned a few moments ago, only got 4 laps to try and get the job done, so it's a little bit of pressure being applied to these drivers. I think saw Bobby Childs in the number 88 car move his way up the running order in the LMP3 category, jumping up to a 1 minute 21.647. But as it stands at the moment, riding on board with Robert Schwankler in the Wrong Stuff car, we're going to see him run his way around the final corner, about to set his first qualifying lap. And I'm curious, Josh, if we could possibly ride on board with the driver to get a good perspective as to how it is running around this racetrack. It's very odd in the world of motorsports. I'll tell you what, as a keen IndyCar fan, usually seeing races around this track, the European drivers may be making their debut from time to time, can usually have a good race around this racetrack. Certainly hoping that these drivers can have a good, clean night of racing action ahead. That was Robert Schwankler that we're still running on board with, heading his way off into turn number 4. Did not have a good run heading through turns number 1 and 2, which is going to be a big talking point in the qualifying session, not the qualifying session, the race sessions that we have coming up for you tonight. Now he's heading his way out of the 5 and 6 chicane on the back end of the circuit, going down Holman Boulevard on this wonderful campus, so to speak, in the world of motorsports. A back straightaway on this road course, heading down into turn number 7, which is going to be a really good overtaking opportunity for these drivers. I think Schwankler may be taking it a little bit easy after that bad run, shall we say, heading through the first 2 corners of this lap. But you can see heading his way off through the infield section, now going back onto the oval. He went through 8 and 9 there, which is really one of the only sections, that and the chicane, which has been pretty much entirely reconfigured ever since this road course was built. And here's another big improvement, so to speak, depends on who you're asking. This section here towards the end of the lap, the 12, 13, and 14, shall we call it a dogleg section, bypassing the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Oval Turn 1. Of course, after the controversy surrounding the 2005 United States Grand Prix, they added in that section to try and slow the drivers down. However, it never really worked out, and Formula One ended up leaving just 2 years after that fiasco. There are many videos on the internet going over that, but as this qualifying session is slowly drawing to a close, I mentioned earlier that we may have an LMP3 racer joining us in the commentary booth. We're actually going to bring him in right now, that being Aaron Beaver, who's now joining us in the commentary booth. And now, Mr. Aaron Beaver, welcome to the commentary booth here on Apex Racing TV. And I was mentioning to the viewers how you've made this switch to go from GT4s to LMP3s, and tackling a track as tough as this. Do you think it's a little bit hard to try and get back into the groove of things with the LMP3s? Because you did run those cars last season.
Yeah, it was a little bit, but I've driven Indy a lot. And so, yeah, I just had to adjust to the LMP3 again. But I think I've got a handle on it. You know, I just got to be smart and especially be patient when we, get in traffic. And then I, just not do anything dumb, and I think I'll come out okay.
I think the traffic is going to play a huge role in this race, harking my mind back to the opening race of the Ricmotech World Challenge just a couple of weeks ago. The lap traffic was a pretty big sticking point for a lot of the prototype drivers, and here with the Sportscar Challenge, it's going to be probably in that same vein. I want to ask you about the challenges surrounding this race. You mentioned the challenges of lap traffic and just trying to keep your nose clean, but heading off into turn number 1 and 2, it's usually a sticking point for drivers both in real life and in the sim. So you want to talk us through what your thoughts are heading into turn number 1 on lap 1 in the 2 races we have tonight?
Yeah, it's just going to be braking earlier than you can, when you're by yourself, paying attention to what the car is doing in front of you. If you can go, too wide and, keep up your speed, then great. If not, get single file and deal with it, because 5 and 6 is really hard to go, too wide through there. I mean, it's practically impossible to, keep speed going too wide through there. So 1 and 2 isn't bad, you know, and 3, but you've got to get yourself, I think, singled out by 5 and 6.
Hopefully we aren't going to have any aerial acrobatics from any of you drivers up and down the grid for this race. Very nice to hear your insight before we get things ready to go for the 2 races that we have here tonight. Aaron, I'll give you a little bit more time before this qualifying session ends to get your bearings straight before the race, but good luck. Have some fun out there, man. Have a good race.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
And there we go. That was Aaron Beaver joining us in the commentary booth. I should have mentioned to him that he may need to give race control a little nudge, nudge, wink, wink to our pals in race control. Mr. Ryan Cobb going to be the race director for all of the races here with this series. But we still have a little bit of time left in this qualifying session. Seeing some more drivers set some lap times on the board. Gotta say, Robert Schwankler jumping up to the front in the GT4 Pro category at a 1-minute 29.963. That is a indomitable lap from the driver behind the wheel of the McLaren. That's a pretty significant gap in the GT4 Pro category, and that is the quickest GT4 time that we've had by a pretty wide margin. So as we were having the chat with Beaver, my apologies, towards the end of that qualifying session, oh boy, I saw a lot of drivers shuffling around a little bit towards the end of that, but I believe most of the cars are left out there on the racetrack at this point in time, so I'm pretty sure that we're just moments away from getting things up and rolling, ready to rock and roll from the first of 2 35-minute long races that we have from this series. And it should be noted to anyone who's tuned into this series for the first time, we do have an invert that we have to keep in mind when it comes time for the second of the 2 races that we have. Usually splits the field in 2, so in the LMP3 category that would split the field in half. Well, it wouldn't split the field in half per se, it would have the top half of the field do a complete invert. And yeah, at this point in time, these drivers just getting some more laps on the board. There you can see Eric Violet in the D2D Sim Racing car currently slotted in 4th in the GT4 Pro category. Let's see, it's an improvement from him behind the wheel of this race car. Coming across the line now, is it an improvement for him to slip his way up the running order? I don't believe it is. That's going to conclude Eric Violet's qualifying session. Set a 1-minute 30.5 on his last lap, so not an improvement from him. Here's Jim Pfeiffer behind the wheel of the 00 LMP3 car. He's currently slotted in 7th at the moment. Of the 8 cars that we have in LMP3, my public school education not really doing me any wonders when I was trying to count through some of the cars that we have. So it's going to be the top 4 in the LMP3 category that we need to keep our eyes on when it comes time for that invert that we have to keep in mind a little bit later on in this broadcast. And of course, all that is going to be sorted out by the wonderful people at the race control here for these broadcasts. And now, with not a whole lot of time left to go in this qualifying session, quickly take another sip of water. As I mentioned before, remember folks, always stay hydrated, otherwise gonna run into some bad health issues. I'm definitely not just saying that because I poured out a whole glass of water, and I'd quite like to be able to drink the whole thing between now and the end of this 2-hour-long broadcast tonight here on Apex Racing TV. This qualifying session has now been drawn to a close. Gonna get the starting grid for you in just a couple of moments time, and there it is. Tyler King behind the wheel of the number 428 LMP3 car. He's going to be leading them overall. Josh Vidal gonna be joining him on the front row. Bobby Child's gonna be starting this race in 3rd. Aaron Beaver going to be starting this race in P4 in the number 97 car. That's going to be Adam Johnson in 5th. Jake Zdow in P6, Jim Pfeiffer in 7th, and Marlon Jones rounding out your LMP3 field. Robert Schwankler going to be starting this race in P9 overall from the top running position in both the GT4 Pro category and the GT4s as a whole. Going to be starting this race in P9. Brian Bennett going to be rounding out your top 10. Zach Mosley going to be starting this race in P11. Eric Violet going to be starting this race in 12th. Then we have David Klimovich, the highest qualifying of the GT3 AM drivers, going to be starting this race in lucky number 13. Mike Dam going to be starting this race alongside in 14th. Chris Thorman in 15th. Travis Schwenke in P16. Robert Hartley in 17th. Neil Weston in P18. David Pan in 19th. And Alexander Brown going to round out your top 20. That's Jeff Jacobs in 21st. Andre Wetter Wedderburn in 22nd, John Sterling in 23rd, Dan Corrido starting this race in P24, Dale Maxwell going to be starting this race in 25th in the 111 car, Tom Jenkins going to start alongside Brian Steele, the Canadian, the number 7 car, going to be starting this race in 27th, next to Lucas Dragata, who's going to be starting in 28th, that's John Casey in 29th, Chad Sebern in 30th, that's going to be Chuck Labano in 31st, Steven Stinson starting this race in 32nd. Chris Klimovich will be starting this race in 33rd. Russ Ruddick in 34th. Matt Petipus, I apologize if I killed that pronunciation. He's going to be starting this race in 35th, next to Greg Brockway in 36th. And Lanning Angerfield, and the second time's the charm on that one, is going to be Leo Dragata, who I don't believe set a qualifying time, and I'm not entirely sure will be starting this race at all. I heard that there's going to be some small little connection issues for him, possibly. Did not set time in practice either. So Greg Brockway, I believe, starting this race in 36th, is going to be the last of the drivers that we have taking to the green in about 1 lap's time. Gotta have a little bit of time on these broadcasts to catch our breath. What we're seeing right now is the calm before the storm. The field already setting off to get this race ready to rock and roll. And I should probably remind any viewers who have never tuned into one of these Ricmotech broadcasts that these starts are a little bit odd, shall we call it, compared to some other series that you may see broadcasted on Apex Racing TV or other series on iRacing. The field does not go on the iRacing green. The field is in the hands of the race director, Mr. Ryan Cobb, who's going to be giving the green flag call before the start-finish line, and the drivers are not allowed to overtake before that start-finish line, otherwise they will incur a start violation penalty. That's a penalty that's been given out to some drivers in the past. Fingers crossed that there won't be one given out to these drivers this evening. However, that's something that we need to keep in mind when it comes to both of these races. Also have a split start. You can see that gap between Marlon Jones starting P8 in the LMP3s and Robert Schwenkler being the highest starting GT4 driver. But at this point in time, these drivers bracing for the start of this race. It's going to be a good one tonight. We've got 2 35-minute races. Whole lot to look forward to tonight on Apex Racing TV. It's going to be a fun show, and I gotta say, to anyone tuning into this stream tonight on Apex Racing TV, it's going to be a blast. It gives you more reason to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss any of the awesome racing action that we have every single week, every single day, it feels like, on Apex Racing TV. The Ricmotech miniMite Sportscar Challenge being one of them. You can catch this series every other Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I believe that would be 5 on the West Coast. Got a whole lot of stuff to look forward to from not just the rest of the season, not just from the Ricmotech World Challenge, whose season is still ongoing, and gonna get that season back up rolling and ready to go in 1 week's time, but from this race as well, from this broadcast as well. It's gonna be a hoot. Got 2 35-minute races in front of us, and we're about to grab the green in just a couple of moments' time. That pace car going to make that turn to go down pit lane. The field about to enter the start zone in just a couple of moments' time, waiting for the call from race director Mr. Ryan Cobb. The field is soon going to be put in the hands of our front row sitters as they go on to the most famous start-finish straightaway in the world of motorsports, waiting for that green flag to come out from race control. The green flag's down. The drivers are on their way. Pretty even kill start from both of our front row sitters in the LMP3 category. Gotta hope that this small LMP3 field gets through the first few corners cleanly. And you can see a little bit farther in the back, the GT4s bracing for their start in this first of 2 races this evening. Most of the LMP3s slotting their way through turns number 1 and 2, mostly clean and still pretty much single file. Meanwhile, in the GT4 category, the green flag is down. The drivers are on their way for that class, and as you can see, pretty good starts from Schwenkler. He's going to be leading them off comfortably into turn number 1, but look at Mosley trying to sneak a wheel around the outside. I've seen him go for some moves in the past around the outside, heading off into turn number 1. Not going to go for the move this time. Got to slot his way into P2 in that GT4 pack. You can see a little bit of contact farther behind. That's a driver going for a spin. You can see, not sure who that is. You can see a Porsche. That's the number 40 Porsche going for a spin. We can see that driver. That's Dan Corrido in the Porsche. Mega sideways to kick off this race, and a big crash coming out of turn number 4. Some drivers already spun. Some bumpers being flown up into the air. Not sure who's involved in that. Can see multiple cars spinning around some cars slow on the racing groove. Hopefully race control can get all of that taken care of. I believe we are still under green flag conditions at this early point of this race, but got a whole lot of replays to take a look at, and we're going to take a look at the very first one. This was involving Mosley. Oh no, Mosley going for a spin, coming out of turn number 4 and getting clipped by an incoming field of GT4 race cars. Oh, that is such a shame for Mosley. Had a fantastic start to this race. However, things not going to play out for him at all. That driver that had a pretty good start to this race, had a pretty good starting spot, and slipped his way up into P10 overall and P2 in the GT4 pack, having a major spin, and that is going to drop him down the running order quite badly. But as it stands at the moment, at the front of the field, it's a championship leader in LMP3's Tyler King, leading over Joshua Vidal in P2, Bobby Childs in third. The driver, the number 88 car for D2D Sim Racing, maybe trying to size up a move in the not too distant future. Heading down the back straightaway, off into turn number 7. You can see that pack covered by barely any air. It's a hornet's nest of LMP3 race cars. Meanwhile, you can see that's Robert Schwenkler. That is the leading car in the GT4 pack. Gotta say, one thing with these split starts that we have in this series, the LMP3s begin to encroach on lap traffic a little bit quicker than you'd usually have in mind. Mentioned earlier on in the broadcast that we're expecting to see about 2 rounds of lap traffic for these drivers, and that may play a big role into how things are going to shake out in this race. I think Josh Vidal just had a moment as he dropped down and was running in P2, now dropped down to P4 as Bobby Childs and Aaron Beaver have gone a move on him to slip him down the running order and out of the podium spots in the LMP3 category. But there you can see it's a hornet's nest of P3. Side by side is Josh Vidal trying to hold off any sort of way he can. That's Zidao on the inside of him. They single file out, heading off into turn number 1. But there you can see Vidal trying to get that move done on Beaver, and it nearly ends in tears heading off into the first corner. That's a fantastic overtaking opportunity if these drivers are feeling particularly audacious. However, if you get it a little bit wrong or hit that curb on the inside in a teeny tiny bit bad way, you're in for a world of trouble. But those drivers making their way through the corner fairly clean. Meanwhile, back in the GT4 field, you can see Steven Stinson in the SMB racing car. He's currently running 10th in the GT4 AM category, up 2 spots as it stands at the moment. Gonna see what he can do to click off the second lap of this race. Gotta say, it's been a pretty hectic start to this race thus far. Had some incidents at the very beginning, but Robert Schwenkler pulling out a pretty good lead as it stands at the moment in the GT4 Pro field, as a 1.1 second gap to himself and Bennett slotted in P2 at this point in time. David Klimovich, meanwhile, has a huge lead in the GT4 AM class, 6.5 seconds in front of Weston. That is a massive gap to kick off this race, and bearing in mind, folks, we are only 4 minutes into this 35-minute race, so still a whole lot to look out. You can see the rest of the field heading their way off through the infield section. That's heading through 8 and 9, which was one of the sections that was majorly reconfigured when IndyCar decided to, actually no, it was after Formula 1 left where we got that configuration that we have today. Before then, it was 2 very tight hairpins, and didn't really create too many flowing opportunities for any of these drivers. And looking back on old F1 races, kind of looks a little bit cursing the infield section look like that, but nevertheless, we're following this race still. Travis Schwanke running 5th in the GT4 Pro category at the moment. The BMW driver for Orion Race Team. He is up 2 spots at the moment. However, he's got a little bit of a challenge from Hartley right behind. Lots of movers and shakers thus far in this race. There's Robert Hartley, his teammate for Orion Race Team. He's up 2 spots as well. Look at Brandon Jacobs as well, both in the GT4 Pro category. They're up 3 spots as well. There's a lot of drivers making their way up through the running order like a hot knife through butter. Let me try that one again. Making their way up the running order. I nearly started yodeling for a second here on Apex Racing TV. I don't think anything would get me fired quicker, but at the moment, Chuck Labano we're following. He's currently running 12th in the GT4 AM category, trying to battle with Brockway heading off into turn number 1. Going to lock up badly and run wide hang through turn number 1. That's going to lose him a little bit of time to the back of Stinson farther up the road. However, he is not close enough, Brockway isn't close enough, that is, to get a move done on Labano at this point in time. The 2 drivers running in the GT4 AM category, running in the Mercedes. They're about 21-ish seconds back of the leader of Klimovich, who's just absolutely dominated this race thus far. But knowing my luck, Probably just jinxing, we're going to see him end up in the barriers in the not-too-distant future. Gotta say, even though this track has been majorly reconfigured, it still holds its FIA Grade 1 certification if they decide to run on the Formula 1 layout without the 5 and 6 chicane, which is probably a little... It's understandable because I don't think F1 or FIA would want to send F1 cars off into low Earth orbit. That would not be ideal in the slightest, but seeing a whole bunch of battling up and down this field. This is Josh Vidal, who we saw drop down the running order not terribly long ago in the LMP3 category. He's still running 4th at the moment. However, he's slowly but surely losing touch to the back of Aaron Beaver, running 3rd in the LMP3 category as it stands at this point in time. He's running effectively in no man's land at this point, as a gap to himself and Z-Down Pfeiffer, who are now starting to battle for the top 5 spot, the final top 5 spot overall in the LMP3s. At this point in time, Josh Vidal hoping to try and close up that gap between himself and Beaver. Of course, we do have some lap traffic to try and deal with, and we're following Tyler King, riding on board with him, heading off into turn number 1. So King already having to deal with a little bit of lap traffic, which can be a sticking point for a lot of these drivers. But King trying to be as patient as he can. That, I believe, is Brockway in the number 62. Right in front of him, going for a spin. Big contact. Heading through turn number 4. That's going to be 2 cars going off the circuit. I believe Weston may have been one of the cars involved in that, as he's lost a spot in the GT4M category. It was a Porsche for sure, and I believe the number 62 of Brockway. That was a big point of drama heading through turn number 4 just a couple of moments ago. Thankfully for our overall race leader of Tyler King, he is able to get away with that incident fairly scot-free. However, that gap between himself and Bobby Childs has decreased a little bit, now down under 2 seconds. I'm curious, Josh, if we could possibly take a look at a replay to see exactly what went wrong heading off into turn number 4 just a couple of moments ago. This may be it. That looks like a very similar looking race car to the one that I saw stop. That's Steven Stinson. Oh, a little bit slow heading through the corner, and the number 62 running into the back of him and spinning both of those cars around. That may be a penalty heading the way of the number 62, so that's going to be a big sticking point at the beginning of this race. Less than 10 minutes on the clock at this point in time, less than 8.5 minutes on the clock, really, if we're being completely honest, and as accurate as we possibly can. That is going to be not ideal for Greg Brockway behind the wheel of the number 62 Mercedes. But look at this, the closeness with the LMP3s trying to deal with that GT4 lap traffic. That nearly came to a head heading off into turn number 1 just a couple of moments ago. I've said this many times on broadcast in the past, and I will continue to mention it with these multi-class races, especially with prototypes and GTs. You occasionally tend to see a little bit of a game of chicken develop with the prototype drivers. They want to go for some moves, then they want to try and push the limits just a little bit, then they just come to a head and ends in tears for both an LMP3 racer and a GT4 racer as well. So some of these drivers trying to exercise a little bit of caution, but again, they're racing drivers. They occasionally get caught up in the red mist. Trust me, it takes one to know one. So occasionally things can go wrong. That's why we have race control, to keep a close eye on these drivers in case anything comes to a head. This is Adam Johnson running down 2 spots at the moment in the LMP3 category. The Wrong Stuff driver has had a wrong start to this race, and that's the wrong way around for GT4 coming out of turn number 12. That right there was Lucas Dragata, the Dragon Sport racing car, taking the shortcut to come back onto the racing line. I'm not sure that's going to work out too well. Lucas, he is definitely going to pick up a major slowdown, and possibly even a penalty from iRacing for that. That was a pretty egregious case of corner cutting. An interesting interpretation of track limits from Lucas Dragata. Meanwhile, in the LMP3s, it is still pandemonium. Bobby Childs running P2 at the moment. Josh Vidal and Beaver going for a spin. That's Beaver stopped on the outside of the track coming out of turn number 2. So Beaver running into some trouble with the GT4 traffic, going for a major spin heading through the corner. That's a choke point for these drivers we talked about when we were interviewing the man before the start of this race, about how turn 1 and 2 can be oh so tricky in these races, especially with some slower traffic. We just saw that get put on full display a couple of moments ago. Tough for Beaver, who's putting on a pretty good show. However, that is going to careen him down the running order, now running 8th in the LMP3 field. I'm curious if we would possibly be able to take a look at a replay to see what exactly went wrong for the driver who at one point was running very, very strongly in the LMP3 class. Oh, you can see 3 wide, hang off into turn number 1, and oh boy, that was, I believe he went for the move on Vidal, tried to make it 3 wide, heading off into turn number 2. You can see riding on board with Beaver, a little bit of contact with Bobby Childs heading off into the corner. That's not going to do him any favors, but then try to make it 3 wide with Vidal coming around turn number 2. Oh boy, I'm curious if you could possibly take a look at another angle of that, because that looked, it was an interesting looking collision for sure. I'm trying to look at that again to see exactly how Vidal got involved in all of that. There you can see Vidal. That was a little bit of bumper cars action, it must be said. Lots of aggression from both Vidal and Beaver. I'm not sure how race control is going to call that, because that looked like a pretty... I'll leave race control to be the one that decides how things will shake out for that. I will say race control sent across a message not terribly long ago, an incident involving Bobby Childs in the number 88 car, and I believe Lucas Dragata in the 119 has been reviewed, and there's no action taken as a result of that. That, I believe, may have been the reason why we saw that spin for Lucas, and also that interesting interpretation of track limits as he was trying to get back going in the right direction. I'm curious, Josh, if you could possibly try and load up a replay of that incident that happened to Lucas not terribly long ago. However, it was a matter of a few laps ago. I'll give you a little bit of time to get that loaded up. I gotta say, Josh, well done keeping track of all the stuff that's been going on this race thus far. These races usually get quite hectic, and we're going to see a little bit of that hecticness continue with this replay following Dragata. He's on the inside line, and he had a pretty significant curve back. I got to say, drifted out a little bit in the path of Bobby Childs in the LMP3. Got to take a look at another angle with the helicopter camera or the drone camera, whatever we want to call it here on Apex Racing TV. Dragata with a pretty big curb whack, and then the 88 with really no room to go at all. You can definitely understand why race control decided not to give that any sort of penalty, because really there wasn't much that the number 88 could do, gotta say. And the incident involving car number 97 and 26 is under review. That was the incident involving Beaver and Vidal heading off through turn number 1 and 2, so that is going to be under investigation by race control. We'll try and take a look to see if there's any sort of penalty that comes the way of either of those drivers as a result of that. Gotta say, just from my perspective as a broadcaster running around like a chicken with my head cut off, so to speak, it looked like a pretty 50-50 deal. That looked like an off-track moment, hang off into turn number 7. Not sure who exactly that was. It have possibly been Marlon Jones, the lead Paul Racing driver. They're running down in 8th as it stands at the moment. They haven't lost spots since they started this race. However, they haven't gained any either. They did gain a spot on Beaver not terribly long ago. However, I think things have gone a little bit awry for them. But maybe, would we possibly be able to find a replay to see that off-track excursion? May have just been a major lockup heading down into one of the heaviest braking zones around this circuit. Very challenging as well. Ooh, there you can see that's Beaver right behind Marlon Jones, trying to keep in front, and it looks like, a little bit of rear locking heading off into turn number 7. Major spin for him, gotta say, well done from Beaver to keep it going and keep it out of the way of Marlon Jones as they went for the spin heading off into turn number 7. That's the thing with these LMP3s and really prototypes as a whole. You really start to see it a lot, especially in the Ricmotech World Challenge when it comes to the GT4 racers. Occasionally get some rear locking with the hybrid systems that those GTP cars have. Can occasionally get a little bit of overslow on the rear axle, and you can just go spinning like a top. I remember from my karting days back when we all used to have rear brakes, that was always sketchy trying to get it slowed down, especially in the wet. Balancing the locking and the rear tires was never ideal. I was very happy to get into a shifter car which has brakes on all 4 tires. But you can kind of see that in the P3s. If they just have a little bit too much engine braking, you can see stuff like that happen. Neil Weston currently running second in the GT4 AM category, 14.7 seconds back of the leader in class, as a fight going on between Vidal and Childs, heading off into turn number 1 and 2 right now. Childs on the inside, Vidal on the outside. Looks like Childs is going to get that position, and Vidal's going to back out of it. So Vidal, the driver of the number 26 car, trying to get a move done, and I gotta say, No call yet. Actually, no, there has been a call. There's been a plus 5 second post-race penalty tacked on to Joshua Vidal behind the wheel of the number 26 LMP3 car. So that may be the reason why he's trying to be a little bit more racy with Childs, because as it stands at the moment, he would be at risk of losing out on the podium to Jake Zidao. So he's trying to force the issue on Childs. However, if these drivers start to battle a little bit harder, we could see Zidao get involved in this fight as well. Actually, I say that I don't think he would get involved in this fight. However, he would be in the catbird seat to jump in front of Vidal after the penalty is applied. But I gotta say, with an 8-car LMP3 field and a half-field invert, I don't think it would be entirely a bad thing for Vidal to drop down to 4th, because he would grab the reverse grid pole for race 2. There you can see the battle continuing with Jake Zidao and Jim Pfeiffer. So those two going to battle for the final 2 positions in the top 5 overall. It's going to be an interesting fight. I'm curious how that is going to shake out in reference to the Childs and Vidal pack a little bit farther up the road. Those 2 cars still covered by barely any air, running 2nd and 3rd, running in the final podium positions as it stands at the moment. 17 minutes on the clock of this 35-minute long race. Have already seen some incidents thus far. Gotta say, some more penalties heading the way of some drivers out there. There's an incident involving Jeff Jacobs in the number 38 car and the number 199, in which the number 199 has picked up a plus 5 second post-race penalty. So I'm curious, Josh, if you could possibly find a replay to see what may have went wrong for Jeff Jacobs. There you can see him in that number 38 BMW, currently up 3 spots from where he started in this race. I feel like he was running inside the top 5, so maybe this incident with 199 may have been the reason why he's dropped back a little bit, giving a 5 second penalty to Chad Sebrin behind the wheel of the number 199 GT4 and Mercedes. So at this point in time, these drivers slowly starting to settle into a groove in this race. They're trying to take things as... I'm trying to figure out the best way I could describe it. I wouldn't say they're taking things slow. They're still pushing it to the absolute limit of control. However, they are trying to settle this race into some sort of groove. That's the thing with these 35-minute long races. It doesn't give the drivers too many opportunities to just settle in and get behind the wheel and get a little bit of, I guess it would be highway hypnosis. I guess would probably be the correct term. This may be the replay with the incident involving Jeff Jacobs, or actually, here we can see him. It's actually Alexander Brown that we're following right now. So that was Alexander Brown maybe getting past Jacobs, heading down the start-finish straightaway off into turn number 1 and 2. You can see a little bit of smoke a little bit further in the back, so I'm not sure what happened. So that was just Alexander Brown getting a move done on Jacobs, maybe picked up a some sort of slowdown penalty coming out of turn number 13, I believe it was. Yes, it would be turn number 13. Did I get my correct numbers here correct? And here is the replay of the incident, which is given a 5 second time penalty to the driver, the number 199 of Chad Sebrin. Seeing them heading off into turn number 12, Sebrin goes for the move, and it ends in tears, having a pretty significant side-to-side clout with himself and Jacobs off into turn number 12. That's a pretty significant whack for the two of them. I'm curious if Jacobs has picked up some sort of damage as a result, and that could be the reason why he's dropping down the running order. Gotta say, looking at that replay of the move that Brown put on him not terribly long ago, looked like that number 38 BMW was struggling a little bit heading down the start-finish straightaway in terms of straight-line performance, so that may have been the reason why we saw that happen, and that may also be the reason why a penalty has been issued to the driver of the 199 car. At this point in time, though, race slowly settling into a groove. Gotta say, there's another incident, this time involving Bobby Childs and Josh Vidal. The drivers of the number 88 and 26 are under review. So there was an off-track moment. We've completely missed it. My apologies. So Bobby Childs running decently. I mean, he was running second in the LMP3 category. It's ended in tears as he's now down in 6th. Take a look to try and figure out what happened with Vidal, and Childs is heading off into turn number 12. There you can see Childs right behind Vidal. Oh, he gets a good exit. Oh, a little bit of side-to-side contact, it must be said. That looked like a very bizarre incident. Not sure what was going on with Vidal coming out of the corner. Gotta take a look at another angle of this, but these two were going side by side for a decent chunk of the past few laps. Vidal locks it up, heading off into 12, and trying to get back going in the right direction, trying to rejoin the racetrack. Bobby Childs not a whole lot of stuff that the number 88 driver could do there. That's going to compromise Child's race. That's unfortunate for him. Really, boy, nothing he really could have done, at least from my perspective here on the broadcast. That was that's unfortunate there, as we're going to take a look at another angle of a incident involving Beaver. I keep calling him Bieber for some reason. I apologize, Aaron. He goes for a spin heading off into turn number 4. The Aaron Beaver having a moment in the DTD sim racing car and spinning it around yet again, trying to get back going in the right direction. Gotta say, Marlon Jones may have also had an incident as well. He's dropped down the running order as currently in the pits down 1 lap. So I think there may have been some sort of major incident to affect Marlon Jones. Here they are in the lead Paul racing car heading off into turn number 7. Oh, you can see that's the spin from earlier. I think he may have just decided to call it a night. Everything is said and done. At least call it a race 1 from this first of 2 races that we have to look forward to tonight on Apex Racing TV. I think Jones has just decided to call it a first race of tonight. Not a whole lot of time left to go, and I think he decided that his chances are he was probably better off just taking a small little bathroom break possibly. But we're seeing a fight right now in GT4 Pro between Bennett and Schwankler. Those two just swapped positions not terribly long ago. So Robert Schwankler, the driver who's been dominant in the GT4 Pro category thus far, he was able to get a move. Bennett was able to get a move done on him, my apologies. So the Sector 5 racing driver now up 1 spot from where he started in this race. Last time by was pretty quick. We're going to see the replay of what happened with Schwankler. Pretty significant curb whack heading off into turn number 1. Bennett maybe just having a good exit, possibly Schwankler having a bad one, my apologies. No, it looked like he just, maybe a slowdown, possibly? Looked like he just hit the brakes and decided to allow Bennett in front. Interesting call from Robert Schwankler. I'm not really sure what to make of that. Usually if I had a co-commentator here, I'd be able to ask them for their opinion. Josh, I'll ask you real quick. I'm not sure if you'll be able to have your microphone go live, but I just want to try and ask you about what you may have thought kind of led to that swap in position. Do you think that was a slowdown? I'm just biding time so I can take a sip of water if you couldn't tell.
Yeah, I can come out of the production trailer here for a minute. Yeah, it looked to me around like probably he just took a little bit too much curb there potentially and just let him by. Either that or he's being the nicest driver ever and just let him by because he made a mistake in front of him. But I think it was probably because of a slowdown run.
Alrighty, thank you very much, Josh, for that extra opinion here on this broadcast. Gotta say, occasionally, had some issues before when you were first getting started off here at Apex Racing TV. You used to have a hornet's nest inside of the production trucks. That could be part of the reason why occasionally a producer would jump out from time to time, but thankfully the exterminators came by and took care of that. So, coming out of the broadcast trailer on your own fruition, thank you very much, Josh, for that. We'll probably hear from you later on when I want to bide time, possibly blow my nose, pop in a cough drop, whatever it may be. Adam Johnson running 5th in the LMP3 category. So the driver that was down 2 spots with the incidents involving Beaver and Childs, though, he's been able to get back into a top 5. So this won't be the worst result in the world for him. And I gotta say, looking at the totality of the LMP3 class at the moment, the gap between Vidal and King has continued to decrease. So maybe Vidal, he has a 5-second penalty already, so that's something that we need to keep into consideration. He's not going to get another penalty, though, because the 88 and 26 incident has been deemed a no-action call from race control. But at this point in time, though, Vidal slowly reeling in Tyler King. Of course, King trying to deal with lap traffic at all times, so is Vidal for that matter. But I gotta say, the gap between Vidal and the likes of Zidao and Pfeiffer has actually gone down a significant amount as it stands at the moment, with that 5-second time penalty to be tacked on to these drivers at the end of this race, which is coming up in 10 minutes time. Vidal would be losing out on a podium spot. I believe he would still be holding on to P4, so he would be able to grab the reverse grid pole for the second race this evening. However, not ideal for Joshua Vidal. We'll see if that Phantom Power racing car will be able to take advantage of that reverse grid pole come time for the second race coming up in a not too distant future here on Apex Racing TV this evening. Boy, that's the first voice crack I've heard from this broadcast tonight. Jim Pfeiffer trying to get some moves done on some GT4 traffic. I'm curious, Josh, if we could possibly ride on board with some of these LMP3 racers just to see the hecticness of trying to deal with lap traffic around this racetrack. It's so difficult because really around this track, Turn 1, decent overtaking opportunity. You want to do it convincingly, though, because otherwise, if you're side-by-side, heading off into 2, it's probably going to be ending in tears. Then turn number 7 is a good overtaking opportunity, turn 12 as well, but outside of that, it's usually just follow the leader around this racetrack. It's very difficult to try and get a move done, so for these LMP3 cars, they definitely have to try and vote a little bit of time. We'll share a little bit of wisdom that's always spouted by race director Mr. Ryan Cobb. For some of the drivers dealing with traffic, it's best to try and give up a couple of seconds here and there dealing with traffic instead of picking up some sort of penalty that may tack 5, 10, or even how many seconds would be added onto your time if you pick up a drive-through penalty, which you have yet to see so far tonight, riding on board with Aaron Beaver. And look at that hornet's nest of GT4s that he's trying to deal with. Heading through turn number 12, that was a close call with the car on the inside line, still close with Beaver, but this is, oh my god, that was near tears coming out of turn number 13. But it's such an interesting view in these multi-class races, especially around a track like this, where really even an LMP3, which is not a top, well, it's a top-class running car here in this series, but in the grand world of sports car racing, it's not a top class car. The LMP3 is usually a little bit on the slower end, but around a racetrack like this, even an LMP3 can feel like a bull in a china cabinet. So really at this point in time, some of these drivers may be trying to exercise a little bit of patience, but I think we have a fight brewing in the LMP3 category. King and Vidal are covered by less than a second at this point in time, and Jake Zedal running in third. He's slowly reeling them in too. He's about 3 seconds off of King, so I'm not entirely sure if he would be able to close up that gap between now and the end of the race. Certainly has a decent amount of time left to try and get the job done with about 7.5 minutes left on the clock. But at this point in time, the driver running in third has a pretty decent shot to win it if everything is said and done and everything goes his way. Vidal at this point, he's going for all that glory. He needs to get in front of King and extend a 5-second gap in order to even have a hope and a prayer of even snagging a podium from the first race this evening. But Vidal, as much as he has that 5-second penalty, which is going to hinder his result here in this first race, that's a driver we definitely need to keep our eyes on, because that car looks like it is fast. It looks like it is menacing. So we're going to see Joshua Vidal be a big factor in the second race. I feel he may be a big factor and a thorn in the side of King, who has to go off the track coming out of the chicane trying to deal with some traffic. This is like rush hour traffic for these LMP3 drivers, and this may be the opportunity that Vidal needs to get a move done on King. Not close enough. Heading off into turn number 7, but Tyler King feeling the pressure. He's feeling a burn, and he's feeling that LMP3 of Vidal slowly chomp at his bit. That car is slowly getting bigger in his rear view mirror, and that is terrifying for a driver who's in the championship lead and wants to try and have a clean, calm, and collected day of racing action here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Vidal looks for the move, heading off into turn number 12. Not close enough, however. He's got a fast race car. King maybe dropping back a little bit. He's in the championship lead. He probably knows that Vidal has a 5-second penalty heading his way. He's thinking about the championship. He's thinking bigger picture. He's thinking about the points. Vidal, meanwhile, he is going out for all-out glory. He may be able not to take the championship in points. He may not be able to take the win. However, he will be able to take the checkered flag if he pulls off a move like this. Heading off into turn 1, and he goes off the track. Heading down into turn number 1 and 2, Vidal nearly running into the side of Tyler King. I couldn't even believe my eyes. I did not think that Vidal was actually going to risk it. I completely got sidetracked. I didn't even know what I was saying for the past few seconds. That was unbelievable. Vidal, despite the fact that with that penalty, he may not be able to take the race win points, he wants to grab that checkered flag. He wants to go for all-out glory, and this was an all-out glory dive heading off into turn number 1. It was a matter of millimeters separating those two cars. Actually, I say that I think there was contact between the two of them heading off into turn number 1 and 2. But Vidal, you got to give the man credit going for all that glory. He's now dropping down the running order quite a lot So the driver who we nearly saw, well, briefly saw, take the lead of this race, he's now dropped down to 4th and is also at risk of losing out on the reverse grid pole to Johnson. So I'm curious if he's picked up some sort of slowdown penalty as a result of that off-track escapade heading through turns number 1 and 2. Gonna try and use this as a small little opportunity to catch my breath. Good golly gee willikers, this race has been so exciting thus far. It's been fantastic, and hopefully everyone tuning into this broadcast tonight on Apex Racing TV has enjoyed it thus far as well. And hey, we're about 31 minutes into this first of 2 35-minute long races. Got a whole lot to look forward to. We're looking up and down the running order. This is David Klimovich in that leading GT4 AM Porsche. He has a 21.6 second lead over Weston in P2. This has been an absolute clinic from Klimovich. At this point in time, I'm not sure what he would be able to do to lose out on the win in GT4 AM. Meanwhile, in GT4 Pro, it's still pretty close between Bennett and Schwenkler. Those two cars covered by about a second as things stand at the moment. Got a fight on our hands involving John Sterling and Wedderburn. Very close, heading through turns number 1 and 2. And look at Maxwell maybe trying to pick up the pieces if these drivers come to blows. Running a little bit wide is Andre Wedderburn. He may have a fight on his hands, heading his way down the back straightaway into turn number 7. The draft isn't a big factor in these GT4 races, however, can provide some assistance to the driver. John Sterling maybe got to try and get that move done down the inside, heading off into turn number 7. Not close enough, but look at Maxwell maybe trying to get that move done in that Porsche. This is a fight between a McLaren, a Mercedes, a Porsche, and also another car a little bit farther in the back. Lots of these drivers battling oh so hard. That, I believe, is a GT4 Pro runner. In the midst of all that, Schwenkler coming down pit lane with less than 3 minutes left to go. Why on earth has Robert Schwenkler come down into the pits? This is an interesting call from him, trying to see if there's some sort of penalty that was possibly issued towards him at this point in the race. I don't believe there has. I don't believe there's been a drive-through penalty issued at to Schwenkler. Maybe possibly an iRacing occurred penalty, maybe not serving a slowdown in time. No, he's coming down into the pits. So maybe Robert Schwenkler under-fueling his race car, not able to make it to the checkered flag. Disaster for the Wrong Stuff driver, who was on track to take a pretty convincing victory in GT4. Of course, lost out on the lead to Bennett not terribly long ago. However, Schwenkler running into some more difficulties with less than 3 minutes left on the clock. That is going to be a heartbreaker in these 35-minute long races. You don't want to come down pit lane. There's no real reason to come down pit lane. That's going to be a tough pill to swallow if you're Schwenkler in that McLaren. Only 7 seconds stopped in the box. Here's Alexander Brown. He was the other car that I mentioned was involved in this fight, in the midst of this fight, I should say, between Andre Wedderburn, Sterling, and Maxwell in the GT4 AM category. So Brown, the Eagle Beavers racing car, currently running, as it stands at the moment, 6th in the GT4 Pro category. He's running strong at the moment and is on track for a pretty good result. If he can hold on to it, I don't believe he would be able to lose or gain a spot as it stands at the moment. Pfeiffer getting a move done on Zidow. Zidow dropping back. I think Zidow just had a major mistake as he's lost out on not only P2, not only P3 and P4, he's lost out on a whole lot of spots. He's now down to P6, and that's a spin for him, I think, coming out of turn number 4. There you can see him stopped in a run-up to turn number 5 and 6. And here's a replay of Zidow, who is on track for a pretty good result in the LMP3 category. Just going for a simple spin, no contact. Oh, big contact, actually, with himself and Vidal. So Josh Vidal rubbing salt into the wounds of the driver who's had an up-and-down race thus far. The Phantom Power Racing driver has a pretty fast race car. Tried to get that move done, however, it's going to end in tears, and it's coming together with his teammate as well. The Phantom Power Racing cars coming to blows, and oh, that was a pretty significant whack for the both of them. That's some pretty significant damage as well. Saw some bodywork flying. Not sure if that was just my iRacing playing some tricks on me. Nevertheless, that was a big bit of contact that just happened a couple of moments ago. Going to ruin those two races, and that's actually given P2 to Pfeiffer as it stands at the moment. And I believe with penalties and all that stuff, Bobby Childs would be inheriting the reverse grid pole for the second of two races that we have for you this evening. Looking at a fight involving John Sterling running third in the GT4 AM category, and they're both spinning. Oh, big drama, more drivers involved. That, I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, not sure who that was. The other Mercedes involved in that may have been Alexander Brown in the GT4 Pro category, but that was heading off into turn number 10. There's Tyler King, meanwhile, leading in the LMP3 category, withstood one challenge, really, from Vidal. Gotta try and find that replay after this driver takes the checkered flag in a couple of moments' time. But Tyler King, the driver leading the championship in the Aerokinetics car, which is leading the team championship in this series, gonna round his way around turn 13 for the final time. It's been a great race for Tyler King to kick this race off, kick this round off, and going on to the yard of bricks for the final time. Tyler King is going to win the first race this evening here from the Ricmotech miniMite Sports Car Challenge. King wins it. Pfeiffer going to finish well behind in P2. There's Pfeiffer rounding his way around the final corner now onto that start-finish straightaway. 13 seconds back of King when everything is said and done. He's going to be finishing in P2. Johnson going to round out your podium in third, and Vidal going to finish in fourth. However, with those post-race penalties, he is going to be shooting outside of that top four, and I believe Bobby Childs would then inherit the P4 result and also the reverse grid pole for race 2. Hectic stuff that we've seen from the first half of racing action here tonight from the miniMite Sports Car Challenge. Waiting for some more drivers to cross the line. Here is Brian Bennett. That's across the line to win in the GT4 Pro category. The Porsche driver has been pretty convincing in this race and got that move done. However, it's a photo finish coming to line with himself and Klimovich. Of course, that's not for position. However, those two drivers who both take the victory in their respective GT4 classes, giving us a pseudo photo finish, so to speak. If that was for the, if GT4 was covered in total, and that was a photo finish for the GT4 win, that would have been probably my cue to blow out my vocal cords, waiting for some more drivers to cross the line at this point in time, and going to find the replay to see that drama involving Sterling heading off into turn number 10. Trying to get the numbers right, and there you can see the contact side-by-side action gone desperately wrong. It's going to end in tears for all of those drivers. We got one race down and one more race left to go here from round number 3 of the Ricmotech miniMite Sports Car Challenge. Going to take a quick little commercial break and come back with the results from that first race. It's been a great way to kick this evening off. Hopefully all the viewers tuning into the stream tonight on Apex Racing TV have been able to enjoy it. I certainly have in the commentator's booth, despite my stuffy nose. It's been a fantastic way to kick this evening off, and hey, we still got a little bit more action to look forward to, so we're going to be right back after these messages.
Ricmotech, high-performance sim racing equipment. Whether you're just looking to have fun, train for race day, or become a serious esports competitor, Ricmotech has you covered. Hundreds of name-brand parts. Support from experts that love sim racing. Trusted by the pros. There's only one place to go, Ricmotech.com.
The SCCA Foundation is a 501c3 organization serving as the charitable arm of the Sports Car Club of America. One of the programs partially funded by the foundation is the SCCA Academy, an online learning management system used to keep real-life racing track officials up to date on the highest standards of race safety and officiating. Through this program, the SCCA Foundation is supporting the future of the best-trained corner workers and event officials in motorsport. You can support these efforts at www.sccafoundation.org. The search is over. The most comprehensive league scoring solution is here, with the ability for multi-level championships, custom incident tracking, post-race time penalties, support for heats, drop weeks display, multi-car team scoring, advanced web widgets, rookie championships, a custom paint system, and load those results in seconds. Visit extremescoring.info today.
Ricmotech high-performance sim racing equipment. There's only one place to go. Ricmotech.com.
Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to tonight's broadcast of round number 3 of the Ricmotech miniMite Sports Car Challenge. It was a fantastic first 35-minute long race, and hey folks, we still have one more to look forward to. But before we start talking about that, let's take a look at the results from this first race here tonight. It's been a fun night of racing action thus far. It's going to be some more fun for this second 35-minute long race, and we do have a flip to talk about. More on that in just a couple of moments' time. Gonna get those results loaded up in just a couple of moments' time. A little bit of WD-40 to try and get the graphics loaded up. There we go. That's Tyler King who takes the victory in the 428 Aerokinetics car. He wins it 13.141 seconds in front of Jim Pfeiffer in the 00 car, who finishes in P2, with Adam Johnson running at your podium in 3rd. Josh Vidal finishes on track in 4th. However, thanks to a 5-second post-race penalty, my apologies, I believe he is actually scored in 5th, unless I'm very much mistaken. Bobby Childs going to be finishing that race on track in P5, going to be classed in P4, and I believe will actually take the reverse grid pole for this second race. Aaron Beaver going to be finishing this race in 7th. In 6th, my apologies. Jake Zidow going to be finishing in 7th. David Klimovich ends up taking the top finishing overall GT4 position, P1 in the GT4 AMS as well. Brian Bennett ends up in 9th, top running of the GT4 Pro drivers. That's Mike Dam in P10, Eric Violet in P11, Travis Schwenke in P12. And then running at your top 15 is going to be Robert Hartley, Neil Weston, and Dale Maxwell. We'll go through the rest of the finishers to try and save out on my voice. I will try not to mention all of them because we have a packed grid. That's one thing when it comes to these races. Got a whole lot of drivers and just a whole lot of stuff to talk about as well. There's battles up and down the track. I gotta feel bad for our producer. He has to be like a chameleon looking at about 14 bajillion different things at once while we're on the air here on Apex Racing TV. But I gotta say, Josh, well done on all the cameras. It's been a hectic night of racing action thus far. My voice is still hanging on virtually by the skin of its teeth, flying solo here tonight on Apex Racing TV. Trying to say that 5 times fast. Got a little bit of a lull, though, before we get things up and rolling and ready to rock and roll. From the start of this race, I don't think we'll show the starting grid graphics for the simple sake that it shows how iRacing wants these drivers to get started. This race control is going to be inverting the top half in both of the classes that we have, so it's probably not too representative to show the starting positions that we're going to be having for this race. Let's see the fields slowly get themselves sorted out and taken care of. I'm curious, Josh, if we could possibly switch to a scenic camera, possibly, around this track, because as someone who has lived through this process myself, I know it can take a little bit of time. So while we are waiting for this field to get themselves sorted and ready to rock and roll from the second of 2 races from the 3rd round of the Ricmotech miniMite Sports Car Challenge, we'll hold off on the commercial, I think, Josh, and I'll just wax lyrical about the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the history about this wonderful track. It's something I am kind of paid to do in a weird way, but it's just something I love talking about nevertheless. Mentioned earlier on in this broadcast that the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum is being refurbished into a multi-million-dollar facility, which is going to be really good to see considering the amount of changes that have been made to this track over the years. The first race that ever happened here was all the way back in, I believe, 1909, unless I'm very much mistaken. I should have fact-checked myself before this, but it was while the track was being constructed. It was a hot air balloon race. Funnily enough, it was a hot air balloon race held here, and the finisher ended up landing their hot air balloon down in Alabama, unless I'm very much mistaken. A whole lot of great history surrounding this racetrack. Of course, everyone knows about the Indy 500 and the many fantastic winners that have come from it. Joseph Newgarden off the back of 2 back-to-back victories in the race driving for Penske. The first back-to-back winner since Elio Castroneves back in 2001 and 2002. And adding on to the legacy that Penske has built around this fantastic facility that he now owns. And funnily enough, the previous owners of that being the Holman family. I was reading into this a little bit earlier. It's a story that I've heard before. But it's really odd to think about how this track, back in about 1945, was on the brink of extinction. It nearly just became a footmark in American motorsports history. But thanks to Tony Holman taking over the reins of this racetrack, it was able to be saved and turned into the wonderful facility that we all know and love to this day. There's some photos out there of how this track looked like back in 1945. And it's a pretty odd spectacle, to say the very least, looking at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in its completely abandoned state. There's only I'm trying to think now, there's only a handful of racetracks that are still operational, where there's photos of it that are just the track being completely abandoned. There's only a couple that really come to mind. It's Indianapolis, which was abandoned, of course, during World War II because auto racing was banned from the United States entry in the Second World War, all the way up until the end of the war in 1945. The A1 ring, now known as the Red Bull ring, was abandoned for quite some time. There's actually some photos of that track abandoned back in 2008. It's a very interesting spectacle to look at that as well. And also, I occasionally bring this up whenever it's time for a broadcast here on Apex Racing TV that I'm a part of from VIR, and I'm sure our producer Josh is very much sick of me talking about it. VIR, at a decent point in its history, was abandoned. The track originally opened back in the 50s, I believe stayed open until about 1970, then became abandoned from that point all the way up until the year 2000. So it was a whole lot of time where these drivers were just kind of, well, there was no racing action going on around there, still waiting for the field to get themselves sorted out and ready to rock and roll from this night of racing action, which has been so entertaining thus far. The entertainment looking to continue. Hopefully everyone enjoyed that small little history lesson about the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Oh boy, talking about Indianapolis Motor Speedway history enough for me to enough to make me cough on this broadcast here today. Looking at the field still stopped on that start-finish straightaway at this point in time. This car all right back in pit lane, so hopefully going to get this race underway in just a couple of moments' time. I'm trying to think of some more Indianapolis Motor Speedway history I can possibly share before we get this full pace lap underway and ready to rock and roll. Oh boy, trying to scrape through the history and plethora of useless knowledge. My dad used to actually, good time to mention this. Today is September the 30th of 2024, and it is my father's 67th birthday. So happy birthday, Dad! You're probably got this broadcast on downstairs. He may be asleep because I know he cracked open a bottle of adult beverages once he got home from work, so he may not be awake at this point in time. But happy birthday, Dad! Happy 67th, and hopefully you've enjoyed it outside of the chaos that he had to deal with at work this morning, and hopefully enjoy the pizza that I picked up on the way back home. But nevertheless, the field now on this pace lap, we're ready to get things up and rolling and ready to rock and roll. With that birthday shout out of the way, I can't even remember what I was going to mention history-wise about this track, which I think is a good thing. The history lesson is out of the way. Now we can think about the now and now. That is a terrible phrase. That is a little bit of a contradiction, but it's the now and now that we're paying attention to at this very point in time, waiting for this field to get this race underway and ready to rock and roll. Interestingly enough, it is not going to be Bobby Childs on the reverse grid pole. It is going to be Joshua Vidal. So, interestingly enough, despite that penalty from race control, I believe there may have been some sort of penalty possibly issued at to Bobby Childs in the number 88. That could be part of the reason as to why he ended up not in front of Joshua Vidal to kick this race off. Set to get things underway for the second race of this evening. It's been a thrilling night of racing action. Expecting things to continue in just a couple of months. As I take a quick little break to take a sip of water, always remember to stay hydrated here on Apex Racing TV. Don't want to develop any sort of health issues if you don't stay hydrated. That's always a broadcaster's lesson. Rule number 1 of broadcasting, of course, make sure that your microphone isn't on. And rule number 2 is always keep some bottles of water around you, or a glass of water, depending on what you have in mind. But waiting for this race to get back underway, the second race of this evening, waiting for the green flag to come out in just a couple of moments' time. The field entering that start zone. The field is now in the hands of race director, Mr. Ryan Cobb, ready to get things rocking, rolling, and ready to go. The green flag is out, and the drivers are on their way. Pretty good start from Josh Vidal. He's going to be leading them comfortably, heading off into turn number 1, unless anyone has something to say about it. 3 wide, fanning out a little bit farther behind towards the back of the pack in LMP3s. Look at the dive, heading off into turn number 1. It's going to end in tears. That is a major incident in the LMP3 field. That's Jim Pfeiffer going for the dive of a lifetime, heading off into turn number 1, and ends an absolute disaster. He goes for a spin, making contact with Vidal. Meanwhile, the GT4 field, the green flag is out for them, and the drivers are on their way, heading off into turn number 1. Pretty good start from the BMW. That's Jeff Jacobs in the number 38. He's going to be leading them comfortably. Meanwhile, 3 and even 4 wide, a little bit farther in the back. These drivers, despite the well-known challenges surrounding turn number 1 and 2 around this track, it's still so inviting if you're behind the wheel to try and go for a bold and audacious move. Main thing is, will it end in tears? But these drivers heading down the back straightaway in the GT4 class for the first time. Hopefully gonna try and find the replay to see exactly what happened involving Jim Pfeiffer. This race has already been so dramatic, it's taking the wind out of me, but Pfeiffer getting involved in an incident with race leader Vidal. He is leading over Jake Zidao in P2, and Marlon Jones currently slotted in P3 in the number 25 car as it stands at the moment. These drivers starting to single file out through the vast majority of this field. Gotta take a look at a replay to see this drama, and Pfeiffer going for the dive of a lifetime, heading off into turn number 1. I have a feeling that he just got his braking marker all kinds of wrong and creating a multi-car stack up, heading off into turn number 1. That's definitely going to catch the ire of race control. I can see a message from race control saying that the start is under review. Could be this incident, could be some drama going on a little bit farther in the back in the GT4s. You can see riding on board with Pfeiffer. That was a kamikaze send, heading off into turn number 1. Really tricky trying to head it off into turn 1, because as I said, it's so inviting to try and go for it. That's an incident farther in the back. There you can see that's an off track. Ooh boy, that is John Sterling in the 267 Mercedes, so he's had off. Driver running 15th as it stands currently in the GT4 AM category, having a pretty rough start to this race. I saw a big cloud of smoke as those drivers round the final corner, and it looks like it was a single car incident. Sterling just going for a spin. Actually, it was synchronized spinning with himself, and ooh boy, who was that? Taking some pretty good evasive action to avoid any further contact and further drama, heading around the final corner at the end of lap 1. I believe that was Steven Stinson, the Canadian in the number 11 car, that was involved in that. Look at this fight going on with Schwenkler and Bennett, the two drivers that were battling for the win in the GT4 Pro category in the first race this evening. They're battling for P4 and P5 in the GT4 Pro class as it stands at the moment, with Brown leading, and we're following Greg Brockway in the number 62 Frito Sport Racing Mercedes. He's currently up 2 spots as it stands, currently running 11th in GT4 AM. However, he finds himself in the midst of a hornet's nest with Klimovich, Stinson, Brockway, Pettipas, and Wetson, covered by barely any Aragase, Pettipas, and Wetson a little bit farther behind. And here's an incident involving the Orion race team driver of Travis Schwenke, heading off into turn number 1. A little bit of contact coming through the corner. That may be an incident that may just be a spin and a very odd time for that driver on the inside to be on the inside of Travis Schwenke as he goes for a spin. He'll hopefully try and find a better angle of that to see exactly what went wrong just a couple of moments ago. The start is still on review. We will keep you posted to hear if there is anything from race control penalties-wise to come out of what we just saw a handful of moments ago. This race start has been incredibly hectic, though. Wedderburn leading it at, Wedderburn running in third. He is leading Casey. However, leading the class at the moment is Chuck Labano with Lucas Dragata slotted P2 in the GT4 AM category. Those two Mercedes covered by less than a second as it stands currently. The Frito Sport Racing driver of Chuck Labano up 6 spots from where he started. That's a little bit disingenuous, though, since it's based off the starting positions that iRacing wanted, not the starting positions after the field flip that we have in the second races here from the Ricmotech miniMite Sports Car Challenge. Alexander Brown leading in the GT4 Pro category. He has a 3.9 second gap to himself and Mike Dam in the BMW. So pretty comfortable gap as it stands at the moment for Alexander Brown. Eagle Beavers Racing driver trying to be eager to try and grab the victory this season. That, I believe, would be his first win thus far this season. What a fantastic venue to try and get the job done. John Casey, who we're following right now, currently running in 4th. He's up 2 spots at the moment. Lock steady in a close fight between himself, Wedderburn, and Maxwell. Those 3 cars, my apologies, covered by a couple of tenths of a second. As traffic already starting to play a role in this race, gotta say Vidal and Zito still covered by half a second. So Joshua Vidal and Jake Zito may start to battle in the not too distant future. Those actually, right as I say that gap's starting to increase between the two of them. They're dealing with lap traffic at this point in time, or at least they are getting close to dealing with that traffic. And once that starts, it is going to be a game changer for the drivers in the LMP3s. We've seen so far today, and we've seen so far this season as well, LMP3 drivers' races get completely turned on their head because of a bad encounter with a GT4 car with lap traffic. I feel like I said GT3 a few moments ago. Their GT4s running around this racetrack in this series. The Vidal trying to get a move done around the outside, hang through. That's turn number 4 at the moment, getting the move done on the number 68 BMW. That right there is one of the most challenging corners. That's the first cough I've had on the air. I apologize for that, folks, if you've ever been disturbed by a cough at the moment. Aaron Beaver going to follow his perspective, heading off through turn number 1. This drama that we saw at the front of the field in the LMP3s, and Beaver, who has had a torrid time of things in this race, really just no room to go at all, getting a piece of that incident. Such a shame for him as well, because he had some high hopes heading into it. And I gotta say, it's not game, set, match for him either. He's still running 5th at the moment, still only 6.5 seconds off of Vidal in the leading class. Oh, and that's a spin for Chris Klimovich coming onto the start-finish straightaway. Be careful here on the rejoin, Chris. Oh, that was a matter of inches between himself and the Porsche. Oh boy, thankfully I'd swallowed the glass of water before then, otherwise I may have choked on it. That was a dangerous moment involving Chris Klimovich and another GT4 racer, not sure who that was. Gotta say, Jake Zito's run into some troubles. He's had to tow back to pit lane. Not sure what in the world happened to him. He's run into some sort of difficulties. The driver running in second not terribly long ago has run into some difficulties. They'll hopefully try and find a replay to see what happened to Klimovich with this major spin, a major source of drama heading through the final corner. This is the 3rd spin that we've seen heading through turn number 14 thus far in this race. Pretty significant wall contact with the inside, and oh boy, that's definitely going to be a penalty heading the way of Chris Klimovich. Oh, that was an unsafe rejoin if ever I saw one. Oh boy, maybe get some hiccups here in this broadcast. That's very strange. I apologize for that. But that was some heart in the throat action for the driver of the number 6 car, who was the first one to really get caught out by that. That was Neil Weston in the Porsche. I mean, thankfully these drivers, well, thankfully or fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you shake it. Oh, as Tyler King has an off-track moment, running second in the LMP3 field. He's going off the circuit, still running strong, second in class at the moment, with that off-track moment for Zidao, which we can hopefully find the replay of in the not-too-distant future. He's still running a comfortable P2 at the moment, but touching back on that incident that we saw with Zidao, that is actually before the start, trying to get the field sorted out. touching back on that incident involving the number 6 of Neil Weston, thankfully, or fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at, these drivers don't have to worry about pit stops. However, I'm sure he would like a change of pants after that very close call with that spun and stopped GT4 Porsche coming out of the corner. That is a blind corner as well. That was a near disaster in the GT4 class. John Casey running 5th in the GT4 AMs. He's still kind of involved in a fight, slowly dropping back into no man's land. That right in front of him is actually a GT4 Pro driver, as farther up in front of him in class is Maxwell, is a couple seconds farther up the road. Here's Zidow's perspective in that incident heading through turn number 1. He was behind Jimbo Pfeiffer. So I think we're going to see Zidow was able to shoot his way up into second. I think with that glorified round of bowling, heading off into turn number 1 and 2, I think that was part of the reason as to why he was able to slip his way up into second. Not sure how he lost out on those spots, though. However, that is going to be a big wrench thrown in the works for him, and unfortunately, we won't be able to find that replay. However, something did happen there, and that is going to drop him down the running order. I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, is still in the race, unless I am very much mistaken. Enough, though, for him to be involved in, and so we should probably touch on some of the penalties that we've seen thus far issued by Race Control. Car number 19, that being Jake Zidow. Okay, that was the reason why he came down pit lane. Jake Zidow was issued a drive-through penalty for an improper start violation. So that's an improper start procedure. Picked up a drive-through penalty for that start violation. So that was the reason why he was down in pit lane. That's going to be a drive-through for car number 19. There was also a drive-through for the 00 of Jim Pfeiffer for those heroics heading off into the first turn at the very beginning of the race. A 40-second post-race penalty, a 10-second post-race penalty for car number 40. A 40-second post-race penalty would not be ideal at all, but a 10-second post-race penalty for car number 40 for avoidable contact. That, I believe, was an incident a little bit earlier on, and also a drive-through penalty for car number 199 of Chad Sebrin for an incident. That's a drive-through penalty for him. But as it stands at this point in the race slowly settling into a groove. It was a much more hectic start compared to what we saw in the first race this evening. However, still a bit on the chaotic side have been both of these races, with Vidal with a huge slide coming out of turn number 13. That may be the opportunity for Tyler King to get moved on him. These two we saw trade paint and trade blows in the first race. Will they go for 2 for 2? They're trading blows and beating doors, going down the start-finish straightaway, side by side, heading off down into the braking zone of turn number 1. Battle last late breakers. Who's going to prevail? And with Vidal with a big slide and King with a big lockup, Vidal's going to hold off the challenge for now. So Vidal hanging on virtually by the skin of his teeth. He was mega sideways, a mega squirrely, heading off down into the braking zone of turn number 1, but Vidal holding on to that lead, at least for the moment, over Tyler King and P2. And if they start to battle and if they come to blows, now look at Bobby Childs in third. He didn't have a very good first race, so the driver of the number 88 car, very much involved in that LMP3 championship fight. He's going to try and find a way to get involved in this fight, and with how hard they're battling and the contact they're making, would not be too shocked if we see Childs get involved in this fight as well. We're going to see close quarter stuff between these two. Vidal and King covered by barely any or less than 0.2 of a second. Closing. Heading down into the braking zone of turn number 12. Actually extending that gap a little bit, dealing with that traffic. However, the traffic is out of the picture. But look at Childs in the number 88 car. He's put on a fantastic charge in the second half of this 9th lap of the race to try and close into the 2 right in front of him. The slipstream isn't too big in these races. However, it can help you out just a teeny tiny bit. Vidal and King maybe got to start to battle and trade paint again in the not too distant future. But right now, Vidal, he's going to be trying to deal with this GT4 traffic cautiously as they were battling off heading into turn number 1 and 2. At this point, Vidal and King. Vidal, that's not what he wants to see at all. He wants to see these GT4 cars get out of his way, and that's not what he's seeing right now. He's seeing GT4s eager to try and battle with each other, but that's not good for Tyler King. Was not able to deal with that GT4 traffic heading through that chicane. That's part of the reason why that gap has now increased to about 1.1 seconds between King and Vidal at the front of the LMP3 field. Ooh, gotta see Charles maybe go for the dive, heading off into turn number 6, trading paint, breaking the elbows out is Bobby Childs. He is never a stranger of getting down and jiggy with it here in this series. He's usually the one that's going to be trading paint and going for the bold and audacious moves. That was a bold and audacious move for sure, heading off into turn number 7. That may fall under the attention of race control because that looked like a very audacious move from Childs in that number 88. Meanwhile, looking a little bit farther behind in the GT4s, Chuck Labano still leading over Lucas Dragata in P2. But that gap between those two is only 0.8 of a second as it stands at the moment. Could see those two start to battle in the not too distant future. I think this is the best vocal cord workout that anyone can get, doing a 2-hour-long broadcast all by themselves. But anyone tuning into this broadcast tonight here on Apex Racing TV, I hope that you have enjoyed not just the great racing, but me wax lyrical about talking about the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and a lot of the history surrounding it and the great racing that we have on track here on iRacing at the moment. Robert Schwenkler, running third in the GT4 class at the moment, was involved in that battle. However, it's been a tough night of racing action from Schwenkler, it must be said. He grabbed the pole in GT4 Pro to kick this race off. Then, grabbed the pole to kick off this night of racing, my apologies. Started from pole in the first race of the two that we've had this evening. Then things kind of took a turn for the worse as Benegat moved on him to slip his way down into P2. But then Schwenkler had to pit from P2, and that relegated him well down the running order. He's still running in third at this point in time, though, so pretty good start from him. Ooh, is a problem for Chris Klimovich. He's run mega wide, heading off into the runoff area into turn number 1. Ooh, boy, there may have been some possible trouble. Oh, there was big trouble. Klimovich, and oh, that was a LMP3 car getting involved in that. Not sure who that was with Klimovich. Possibly may have been Adam Johnson in the 319, according to Josh. Possibly Klimovich, Tom Jenkins, and Adam Johnson. Oh, that was such an unfortunate incident to happen. That is definitely going to fall under the ire of race control. The 68 and 128 incident is definitely going to be under review. Oh, that is up to race control to decide what sort of penalty is issued out as a result of that, but that is definitely penalty worthy for the drivers involved in that. That's tough as well because Klimovich was putting on a pretty good show. Jenkins in that BMW was trying to have a good show as well. Adam Johnson, the wrong stuff. Things have gone desperately wrong for him in this second race of the evening. Look at that. Oh boy, tried to thread the needle. I mean, credit where credit's due for him trying to go into that and thread the needle. However, oh boy, a little bit of arc brakes, it must be said, from Johnson trying to gun for a gap that was always going to disappear, but just tough stuff for all the drivers involved. That incident is definitely going to be looked at by race control quite extensively as an off-track moment coming out of the corner for our GT4M leader of Chuck Labano. He loses it coming out of turn number 10. That gives a lead in class to Lucas Dragata, my apologies, getting the name pronunciation wrong. Chuck Labano, meanwhile, in the Frito Sport racing car, he's had a major moment of drama, and he now finds himself in the midst of a hornet's nest. But Labano having a big moment, losing the lead in GT4M. That's going to give it to this man. Maybe call him a man. I know he's a little bit on the young side. I believe he's much younger than I am, but Lucas Dragata. Oh boy, Labano. Try and find the replay of that incident involving Chuck Labano. Heading off down into turn number 10. Ooh, may have been a little bit of netcode involved in that. Possibly that, or Labano was just already in the midst of losing it. Coming out of the corner. That's such a tricky corner to try and get right. I think there may have been a little bit of both. We'll see how they try and judge that in race control. But for now, we're caught up in this racing action that we see up and down the running order. Steven Stinson currently running 7th in the GT4 AM class. He's right behind Jeff Jacobs in the GT4 Pro category. You can see him in that very striking 38 BMW. I believe he has the SCCA Foundation on that car. And speaking of, we have an obligation here on Apex Racing TV. I'll give myself the opportunity to catch my breath, have a small glass of water, and prepare ourselves for the final conclusion of this second race of the evening. Jacobs currently running 9th in class. We'll take a look at all the battles up and down the running order. is an interclass battle that we see right now, but gonna prepare ourselves for what's set to be a dramatic final 15 minutes in the second race for round number 3 of the Ricmotech miniMite Sports Car Series. We'll be right back after these messages.
Ricmotech high-performance sim racing equipment. Whether you're just looking to have fun, train for race day, or become a serious esports competitor, Ricmotech has you covered. Hundreds of name brand parts. Support from experts that love sim racing. Trusted by the pros. There's only one place to go, Ricmotech.com.
The SCCA Foundation is a 501c3 organization serving as the charitable arm of the Sportscar Club of America. One of the programs partially funded by the foundation is the SCCA Academy, an online learning management system used to keep real-life racing track officials up to date on the highest standards of race safety and officiating. Through this program, the SCCA Foundation is supporting the future of the best-trained corner workers and event officials in motorsport. You can support these efforts at www.sccafoundation.org.
Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to Apex Racing TV with less than 15 minutes left on the clock for the second race of round 3 of the Ricmotech miniMite Sports Car Challenge. It's Lucas Dragata leading it in that Mercedes and GT4 AM. He has a 3.2 second gap between himself and Andre Wedderburn. Meanwhile, in the GT4 Pro category, it is Brown leading it at the moment. Another Mercedes leading in one of the other GT4 categories. He now has a 5-second gap between himself and Mike Dam. Alexander Brown for the Eagle Beavers racing team has been able to wheel that car around the racetrack like it's going out of style, looking to try and hold on between now and the end of this race. But our attention is on this Hornet's Nest in LMP3, my apologies, folks. Vidal, Childs, and King covered by barely any air. Going down the start-finish straightaway, will King try and go for the move on Childs? Will Childs be able to go for a move on Vidal? Heading off into turn number 1. Looks like they're going to try and stay line astern for the time being. Gotta say, you also have to... You can't discount Aaron Beaver involved in that battle as well. The front 4 in LMP3 separated by 1.2 seconds as it stands at the moment. This is setting up to be a fantastic conclusion to tonight's racing action here on Apex Racing TV. And if you've been enjoying it thus far, remember to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss the great racing action that we have here on ARTV. But at the moment there, you can see some interesting interpretation of blue flags from Jeff Jacobs deciding to go down to the inside line, seeing that Hornet's Nest of LMP3s approaching his rearview mirror, and a near close call involving Joshua Vidal and the number 6 heading down off into turn number 10. That was near disaster for the front-running driver overall. The front-running driver, the LMP3 category, Tyler King, who we're riding on board with, currently running in third, but as it stands at the moment, he could very well find himself in the lead in the next 15 seconds. We just never know with these races. King trying to stay tucked behind Childs. Oh boy, 3 wide going down around the final corner with the GT4 traffic. I apologize to anyone whose eardrums I just blew out there because that was oh so tense. Heading around the corner, it looks like that's actually going to spread out Childs and King just a teeny tiny bit. Now Beaver may get involved in that fight as well. There you can see a wide running GT4 heading off into turn number 1. That's going to upset King, and it's also going to upset Beaver as well, trying to take evasive action to avoid making contact with that GT4 and get around them safely. But as it stands still, Vidal, Childs, King, and Beaver running P1, P2, P3, and P4, all covered by 1.4 seconds, with a little bit of a gap developing between Childs and King. King slowing down a little bit. They're going to be side by side heading down into turn number 7. King on the inside, Beaver on the outside. Will King be able to hold off the challenge? Some two-wheel action heading through the corner. Tyler King flying it like a kite, but he was able to keep it on the racetrack and remain in the final podium position, at least for now. We still got 12 minutes less than 12 minutes, in fact, of racing action here from this race. It's been oh so intense. My poor vocal cords are going to be crying themselves to sleep when everything is said and done from tonight. Looking at battles up and down the field as well. There's Brian Steele in the SMB Racing Porsche. He's currently running 5th in the GT4M category. Not really involved in a in-class battle. However, he's got some GT4 Pro drivers around him and may want to try and get dicey with them between now and the end of this race. Brian Steele running strong at the moment. Last on by set 1 minute 34. Travis Schwenke was a car involved in that fight. He's currently running 6th in the BMW, and he's actually got a fight on his hands between himself and Payne running down in 7th in the GT4 Pros, with the gap between those two a tick over 1 second. Andre Wedderburn running 2nd in the GT4M category at the moment, getting a move put on him by a GT4 Pro BMW heading off into turn number 1. That's Mike Dam running 2nd in the category at the moment, slowly trying to reel in Alexander Brown, but I have a feeling just based off the fact that that gap has been pretty much stagnant over the past few moments, I don't believe we'll see a swaparoo in GT4 Pro unless some major drama happens between now and the checkered flag. Andre Wedderburn, who he tried to get past, is also trying to reel in Dragata. However, that may be a losing battle as well. Meanwhile, in the LMP3s, King trying to get a move done on Childs. They're going to be side by side going back onto the high banks, careening their way down to the heavy braking zone of turn number 12. And look at that from Tyler King. He goes off the track and takes that fight down. Oh boy, Tyler King getting involved in that. Vidal in the midst of that as well. What in the world happened there? That is going to be a huge incident in the LMP3s. That's now giving the lead to Bobby Childs. Aaron Beaver going to be slotted in P2. Vidal and King now in 3rd and 4th. I think that's going to be a pretty big penalty for the drivers involved. Gotta hopefully try and find a replay to see exactly what in the world happened there, heading off into turn number 12. There you can see, I think that was heading through turn number 1 and 2 earlier on in the lap. King having a little bit of an off-track excursion coming out of turn number 2, trying to get that move done, but just wasn't close enough. And here is the replay of the drama that we just saw in LMP3. Tyler King coming in. Oh, he had locked it up a little bit, tried to take evasive action, but it just wasn't enough. And Vidal, the poor guy, the innocent bystander, who we said during race 1 has a super fast race car. He proved it in this race. He proved it in race 1 as well. But this move from Tyler King, the driver who took a dominant victory in the first race, he may have been number 1 in race 1, but he's certainly not going to be number 1 in race 2, and he's certainly not going to be number 1 in the eyes of the race directors, as that incident is almost certainly going to be under review. In fact, it already is under review by race control. Race director Mr. Ryan Cobb may be going to issue out a penalty in the not-too-distant future. I gotta say, someone taking one of the other positions in race control, left empty by someone who's on the air tonight. Will not mention names. Palakui Grant, who used to be a driver in this series, is actually in race control, so nice to see Palakui back with this series, taking a season break from the Ricmotech World Challenge off the back of doing well the previous season. However, we've got a fight on our hands in the racetrack, I'm sure, as much as race control is take a look at their incidents. They're racers, they are race fans, and I'm sure they're taking as much of a keen interest in this battle at the front of LMP3 as we are on the broadcast tonight here on Apex Racing TV. Aaron Beaver running in P2, Vidal on the comeback tour in P3. He's still less than a second off of Bobby Childs, so we may see Vidal be able to pull this off when everything is said and done, and that would be a barn burner of a performance. However, he may be able to get a move done on Beaver heading off through and making contact, and that's in tears. Heading off through 8 and 9, my voice shooting up about 5 octaves as a result of that incident. Aaron Beaver going for a spin, the D2D sim racing driver. Oh, he's going off the track yet again. He will be furious with how things have gone for him. Vidal got the short end of the stick with that incident for King not terribly long ago. And now Vidal giving the short end of the stick to Beaver. That's so unfortunate. And that, unless I'm very much mistaken, depending on how penalties shake at, that may very well give the race victory to Bobby Childs. Got to take a look at that incident involving Beaver. Got checked up behind some lap traffic. Tried to take a defensive line heading off into turn number 9. Just cut across. Oh, it'll be interesting to see how race control judges that incident. That, honestly, I could see that going both ways if I'm being completely honest. Josh Vidal, though, he is going to be... Boy, we're definitely going to keep an eye to see how race control judges a lot of this stuff. Gotta say, Tyler King was issued out a drive-through penalty for the incident involving Vidal not terribly long ago, heading off into turn number 12. So I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, he is now serving that drive-through as we speak. However, I'm keeping my attention. There's Tyler King in the Aero Kinetics car. So the driver that won the first race, not going to go 2 for 2. Bad luck, so to speak. And bad judging of the braking, so to speak, heading off into turn number 12. However you slice it, tough stuff for all the drivers involved in the incidents that have taken out some pretty fast race cars in the LMP3 field. Gotta say, even if Vidal doesn't pick up a penalty, that gap to himself and Childs is increasing quite a lot. It's now 2.2 seconds between Bobby Childs and Joshua Vidal. At this point in time, I think there may be not much to fight for in the LMP3s. Gotta take a look at another angle of this incident with Vidal. Oh boy, I can see that going both ways, honestly. Vidal was definitely going for a gap which was always going to disappear in a section of a racetrack where we don't really see drivers go side by side. It's tricky enough single file through that section of the course, let alone side by side. At the same time, I'll let race control decide. I'm not in race control for tonight. I'm in the commentary booth, so I'm going to keep my mouth shut and keep my lips sealed on my opinions on that incident. We're following David Payne, currently up 3 spots, a D2D sim racing driver running 8th in the GT4 category as it stands at the moment. The only position I believe he would be able to gain is a one of Payne, who's right in front of him, the driver, the number 89, Aston Martin, heading his way through turn number 4 right now, battling hard with that's another GT4 car a little bit farther up the road. Not sure who that was. That, I believe, may possibly be Maxwell, unless I'm very much mistaken. Right in front of him there, you can see that pack of GT4 cars right in front of 2 LMP3s. This race slowly starting to settle into a groove at this point in time. 4.5 minutes, actually less than 4.5 minutes on the clock at this point in time. Dale Maxwell, who we're following at this point in time, running 3rd in class at the moment. He may be able to gain a spot between himself and Andre Wedderburn between now and the end of this, as those 2 cars are separated by about 2.5 seconds, as that's a spin for Marlon Jones. Heading through turn number 12, Jones getting a piece of a GT4 car. There's David Klimovich running 6th. He may be able to get a spot in the GT4 AM category as a result of that drama. Actually, I don't believe he will be able to, as that's a GT4 Pro driver that went for the spin, heading through turn number 12. Here's a replay. Marlon Jones, the lead Paul Racing driver, heading their way off into turn number 12, and it was himself and Payne that made contact, and there you can see the 64 tried to take avoiding action to avoid T-boning into the side of the P3 car of Jones. Lots of stuff going on in this race. I've run out of water on this broadcast now, so my vocal cords are going to be shrieking in pain when everything is said and done from this broadcast. But nevertheless, it's been a great night of racing action thus far, and not a whole lot of time left to go on the clock. Vidal coming down pit lane. Josh Vidal coming into the pits, and this is a drive-through penalty for his incident with the number 97 car. So Josh Vidal in the 26, this is going to take him out of contention. It is now going to be a 12.9, we'll just call it 13-second gap between Bobby Childs and Aaron Beaver, my apologies. I keep calling him Bieber on these broadcasts. I feel like I've been listening to the local pop stations here in the city of Philadelphia way too much. But Aaron Beaver running in 2nd. I don't believe he would be able to close up that gap between himself and Bobby Childs between now and the end of this race. That may be game, set, match. Bobby Childs, who is always pretty fast in this series, is involved in the championship fight. That would be a fantastic result for the driver, the number 88 car, who may have had a shot to win it earlier on, however ran into a little bit of trouble that took him out of contention in the first race of the... Two minutes left on the clock. Probably about 2 laps left for Bobby Childs to take the victory in LMP3. Looking at the rest of the classes, though, Alexander Brown leading comfortably in the GT4 Pro category. Gotta say the gap between himself and Mike Dam has actually come down a little bit. It was 5 seconds not terribly long ago. It has come down to 2.9. So maybe a little bit of tomfoolery afoot in the GT4 Pros, trying to give us an exciting finish to this race. Dragata, meanwhile, Lucas Dragata on track for a dominant victory in GT4 AM, 6.3 seconds. We'll call it 6 seconds in front of Andre Wedderburn running in P2. As we have a fight on our hands between Josh Vidal and Jake Zidow, the two teammates for Phantom Power Racing, heading their way through the infield section. Should this be called the infield section anymore? I'm not even sure what that section would be called, heading through turns number 12, 13, and 14 back onto the oval right now. Josh Vidal trying to cling on to that final podium spot. He doesn't have any outstanding penalties. He just has, the drive-through that he served earlier on. So I believe this would be Vidal holding on to the P3 spot when everything is said and done. Bobby Childs still negotiating some traffic. I'm sure he's trying to negotiate this as cleanly and as smoothly as he possibly can, because with 34 minutes and 25 seconds on the clock of this 35-minute long race, Bobby Childs is going to be heading his way through turn number 13 and 14 for the second to last time, on track for a victory. And I'll tell you what, having him in the commentary booth, this is going to be one of the most colorful interviews that we'll ever have here on Apex Racing TV if he is able to seal the deal. Bobby Childs taking the white flag with about 10 seconds left on the clock, make that 12 seconds left on the clock. Got a 9-second gap to himself and Aaron Beaver running second in the LMP3s. So as it stands at the moment, Bobby Childs on track for a dominant victory, even though he's definitely taking it easy. Last time by was about 3 seconds that Aaron Beaver gained over Bobby Childs. So Childs at this point, he can afford to take it easy. That is for certain. But most of the field coming around to start the final lap of this race. Alexander Brown, I believe, will actually be taking the checkered, unless I'm very much mistaken. The time is out on the clock. I believe that will actually be the white for Alexander Brown. My apologies. So he's going to be taking a white. May as well be the checker, though, because he has been dominant in this GT4 Pro class in this second race. Dragata, meanwhile, sets the fastest lap of the race in GT4 AM, still extending that gap between himself and Andre Wedderburn running in P2 in that McLaren, who still put together a pretty good show himself. But looking up and down this field, lots of battles still continuing. Brian Bennett and Schwenkler, these two have been trading blows all throughout tonight. They are still trading blows, battling for the final podium spot in GT4. This is going to be a battle all the way to the checkered flag, nearly making contact, heading off into turn number 4. Looks like they're going to be single file, heading off through 5 and 6, but I think we should switch our attention back to the overall race leader, Bobby Childs, because he is taking the checkered flag to take the victory from race 2 here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Bobby Childs wins it over Aaron Beaver in P2. Josh Vidal going to round out your podium in third, unless there's some sort of outstanding penalties that's going to drop him down the running order a little bit. Meanwhile, in GT4 Pro, going to be following this man, Alexander Brown, the Eagle Beavers racing car, one of the funniest and goofiest team names that we have in this series. This wasn't a funny and goofy performance. This was a great performance from Alexander Brown. He's going to be rounding his way around the final corner for one more time tonight, and he's going to be taking the checkered flag, the top running driver in GT4 Pro, coming on to the start-finish straightaway. And Alexander Brown wins it over Mike Dam in P2. Looking a little bit farther behind, it's going to be Lucas Dragata winning it in GT4 AM. 8.5 seconds is probably going to be the gap to himself and Andre Wedderburn when everything is said and done. Mike Dam going to finish P2 in the GT4 category, with Bennett rounding at your podium in third. Looking through the rest of the field, there's Chuck Labano finishing in fourth, right behind Dale Maxwell, who's going to round out your GT4 AM podium. So lots of the drivers taking the checkered flag from this second race of the evening. It was a hard-fought show from all the drivers up and down the grid. Some fisticuffs occasionally broke out, but the drivers were pushing it. They're racing drivers. They're going to go for the moves. They're going to go for the dives. They're going to go for the sends, and they're going to go for all-out glory. And in the end, in the LMP3 category, it's this man, Bobby Childs, for D2D Sim Racing, that wins it when everything is said and done. Going to take a quick little commercial break here on Apex Racing TV. We're going to be back with some results, some interviews, and to wrap things up here from this broadcast of round number 3 of the Ricmotech miniMite Sports Car Challenge. We'll be right back after these messages.
Ricmotech high-performance sim racing equipment. Whether you're just looking to have fun, train for race day, or become a serious esports competitor, Ricmotech has you covered. Hundreds of name brand parts. Support from experts that love sim racing. Trusted by the pros. There's only one place to go, Ricmotech.com.
The SCCA Foundation is a 501c3 organization serving as the charitable arm of the Sportscar Club of America. One of the programs partially funded by the foundation is the SCCA Academy, an online learning management system used to keep real-life racing track officials up to date on the highest standards of race safety and officiating. Through this program, the SCCA Foundation is supporting the future of the best-trained corner workers and event officials in motorsport. You can support these efforts at www.sccafoundation.org.
The search is over. The most comprehensive league scoring solution is here, with the ability for multi-level championships, custom incident tracking, post-race time penalties, support for heats, drop weeks display, multi-car team scoring, advanced web widgets, rookie championships, a custom paint system, and load those results in seconds. Visit extremescoring.info today.
Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to tonight's coverage of round number 3 of the Ricmotech miniMite Sports Car Challenge. Coming to you tonight from Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We had two 35-minute races full of action, full of drama, and full of twists and turns as well. When everything is said and done, Bobby Childs ends up winning, and we actually have some drivers waiting to have a quick little chat with us here on Apex Racing TV. And I gotta say, as the graphic just told you, if you enjoy all the stuff here on Apex Racing TV and have enjoyed the stuff that you've seen tonight, how about you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss any of the action that we have here on Apex, because it's basically daily at this point. We've got a whole lot of stuff running all the time. And speaking of running, we're going to be running into the interviews, and we're going to be starting it off what I think is probably going to be one of the most colorful interviews that we will ever have here on Apex Racing TV. Bobby Childs, your winner when everything is said and done. Bobby, welcome to the commentary booth. Talk us through it, man.
Oh my lord, I don't know what to say, man. These cars have been a struggle for me. Even last week, man, I had such a bad event, and just coming out here to Indy, I was quick here in the GTPs, a week before. Didn't have a great result there, but I really love this track. I feel like I'm good here. And man, we got a great setup from Hymo, and man, we brought Aaron Beaver on board this week, and he and I had a really good back and forth discussing, better ways to get through the corners, and it all coalesced together. And then some of it, of course, luck went my way, man. When I was right there with that battle 1, 2, 3. We were going through traffic, and I hope that was really exciting for the viewers, but man, I was right there, and when opportunity came, I was there to take advantage of it. And that's as much a part of racing as pace is. And I am absolutely so thrilled. This is my first win in the series and in the league, and I am just beyond thrilled.
Well, I gotta say, Bobby, from my time behind the scenes with the Ricmotech series, it's very nice to see you back that car into victory lane. Early on into the season as well, in a couple of weeks' time, we're going to be heading off to Road Atlanta for the next round of the championship. How do you think that race is going to be for you?
Road Atlanta is a decent track for me. I always have a problem in what I like to call fake oak tree, turn 6. And if you don't get a good run out of turn 6 down that long back straight, I mean, that just kills all your time. And then there's a certain way to get through 10A and 10B. And I'm just, I'm decent there, but the goal for Road Atlanta will be survival, to have another clean race. I think I had a good clean race tonight. Clear those driver incident points from my record, and just see what comes.
Well, fingers crossed that Road Atlanta is going to be a good show for you. Going to be riding off the high of the victory here at Indianapolis, and also going to be on your hometown track here for this season as well. Now, Bobby, before we let you go and celebrate and also go into the post-race drivers meeting room as well, is there anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
Big shout out to Stubby. This is the first week with him back on the car. I hope you guys saw it on the broadcast. I got a little sticker with Stubby as my co-pilot on the side of the car, and sure enough, it brought me really great luck. So Stubby's always out there showing support for the league. And of course, I couldn't do it without the absolutely great teammates I have. Chris and David and Eric and Palakui and Bailey and now Aaron. I mean, these guys have worked with me as much as I've worked with them. And we all, help each other and have a great time, even when the races don't go our way. So I got to send a big shout out to my brothers at D2D, and of course to the List family, the owners of D2D, and Jim and Ellie and their brand new baby, and Mom and Pop List, and I hope they saw that D2D is doing great things.
Well, you're certainly doing great things in that D2D car, taking it to victory lane here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Bobby, congratulations on the win, and excited to see you back on track for the rest of the season, man. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
And that right there was Bobby Childs, the winner in the LMP3 category. We're going to move on to some GT4 drivers, have a quick little chat with them. And the first driver that we're going to be bringing in is the winner in the GT4 Pro category, that being Alexander Brown, who now joins us in the commentary booth. And now, Alex, looked like a pretty hard-fought day or night in the cockpit for you. Talk us through it.
Yeah, I can't believe, I was not going to go in pro this year. And, Kevin, who we're thinking of, who is our fearless leader in the league, challenged me to go pro. And you know what? The first race, I got caught up in that. I think it was the first lap. I'm assuming it was the first lap, and got into the back of one of the Aston Martins, and it caved the front end of my car in. And I did everything I could to stay up to Andre and my teammate John Sterling as well, and to fight to get that 10th place finish. I was losing, no matter what, if I was gaining or not, losing down the straights 2, 3, 4 tenths a second easily. And then that second race, I just kind of, these inverts, I wasn't overly a fan, and I just looked and I thought, okay, I finished in front of these guys in the first race. I just need to run my lines. And then next thing you know, I'm in the lead, and I held it off. And then I think on lap 16, Lucas had a little mishap there. And then I just kind of hit my marks, and whoo.
Well, I mean, you hit your marks, then ended up backing that number 67 Mercedes into victory lane when everything is said and done. Gonna be heading to a much different track in the form of Road Atlanta in 1 week's time. How do you think that race is gonna be for you?
I don't know. I mean, it's a track that I'm assuming we all probably know really well. It's used a lot. I learned a lot actually in this race, and I got to thank Zach Mosley. He actually helped me with just some, honestly, brake bias, traction control, and ABS. And if I can take what I learned there and just apply it to the setups I already have, I think it should be fun. I mean, it's going to be tight. It's a narrow track. I like Mossport. Mossport's my home track, and it's similar. Actually, they were owned by the same people at one point. So, you know, it's going to be another keep it clean and see where the inverts fly and stuff like that in the second race.
Well, excited to see you back out on track for the rest of this season, man. I'm really happy to see you back that car into victory lane when everything is said and done here at Indy. And before we let you go and celebrate this victory, is there anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
Yeah, I mean, I got to thank my Eagle Beaver teammate there in the AM division, John Sterling. Love running these races with him. We don't have any sponsors, so if anybody would like to, you know, slap a sponsor on the Eagle Beaver car, we'd love that. But got to thank you guys for broadcasting the race every week. We got miniMite on board from Ricmotech for sponsoring the series. Again, Kevin, that keeps the league running and is taking a step back at the moment, as Jeff Jacobs, who may he rest in peace after that lap 1 incident in race 2. He's gonna keep it running for us, and I know he's gonna do a great job. And yeah, you know, I just woo. And my wife for letting me do this, as she's just so annoyed that I keep on talking here.
Well, I mean, happy wife, happy life. I guess I will
Happy spouse,
just
happy
leave.
house.
There we go. Alrighty, Alexander Brown, congratulations on the victory here at Indy, and excited to see you back out on track for the rest of the season, man. Thanks for joining us.
For sure. Thanks, guys.
And that right there was Alex Brown, the winner in the GT4 Pro category. And we're going to move on to one last interview before we wrap things up tonight on Apex Racing TV. I see Lucas Dragata waiting there in the commentary booth. We're going to drag him in here, and hopefully the fact he has his mic muted will hopefully go away. Hopefully he is actually there, and we'll drag him into the commentary booth. If he is not, I will talk to myself, which, considering I've made a decent career broadcasting, I find very easy to do. Lucas Dragana now joining us in the commentary booth. Lucas, you there?
Yep.
Alrighty, there you go, Lucas. Well done on the victory here at Indy tonight. Talk us through it, man.
Thank you. I didn't have the best first run. I got a bad start. I didn't get a good qualifying lap. I got spun, and I had to make my way up. Got lucky enough that the guys in front crashed. So, started 6th in the second race, and just kind of ran my lines, and got up to first place overall. Then Alex took it from me.
Well, it still looked like a very hard-fought day behind the wheel for you. Two very different races around this racetrack, and we're going to be heading to a very different racetrack in the form of Road Atlanta in 1 week's time. How do you think that race is going to be for you?
That's one of my favorite tracks, so I hope it goes well and put a lot of practice. And yeah.
Alrighty, practice is key when it comes to these races, and thankfully the series always has a whole lot of practice sessions before then. Now, Lucas, before I let you go and celebrate the victory and also head on off to the post-race drivers meeting, is there anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
Yep, my family, my brother gets me setups. He couldn't race tonight because he was having some PC issues. My whole family, like, for supporting me. Yeah, the whole league. So fun to race with them, and you guys for making an awesome broadcast.
Alrighty, well, thank you for the kind words, Lucas. Congratulations on the victory, and excited to see you back out on the racetrack for the rest of the season, bud. Thanks for joining us.
Yep.
And that right there was Lucas Dragata, the very young man who I think, I could say confidently as a 19-year-old man after this broadcast with a slight cold, that's roughly how my voice will sound like tomorrow's one that Lucas has. But I'll tell you what, that kid has more talent in his entire body at whatever age he is then I have it all. That kid is just absolutely insane. Him and his brother, always fantastic to look at in this series. But we got some great racing action coming up from the entire Ricmotech and Extreme Scoring world, along with the stuff on Apex Racing TV. As I mentioned in the interviews with those drivers, the next time that you're going to see this series is in 2 weeks' time on October the 14th. That is going to be at Road Atlanta. That is going to be a fantastic race in just a couple of weeks' time here for round number 4 of the miniMite Sports Car Championship. If you're in the mood for some more Road Atlanta action, you can check out round number 3, I believe it is, of the Ricmotech World Challenge. They're off the back of 2 dramatic races, one here and one at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. So to continue that season off, gonna be shadowing the Petite Le Mans. That is going to be a great show coming up this upcoming Monday on October the 1st. And if you're in the mood for some more action here on Apex Racing TV, you can check out all the wonderful series that we have to look forward to. Gives you more reason to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a thing. But I think for this broadcast tonight, that will just about do it. So for myself, Ron Mullins, flying solo in the commentary booth, and Josh Wilkie doing a fantastic job working all the cameras in the virtual production hauler and having to listen to my voice and my voice alone for the past 2 hours, I say thank you all so very much for watching. Have a great rest of your night, and we'll see you all again wherever it is in the not-too-distant future.
Ricmotech high-performance sim racing equipment. Whether you're just looking to have fun, train for race day, or become a serious esports competitor, Ricmotech has you covered. Hundreds of name brand parts. Support from experts that love sim racing. Trusted by the pros. There's only one place to go, Ricmotech.com.
The SCCA Foundation is a 501c3 organization serving as the charitable arm of the Sportscar Club of America. One of the programs partially funded by the foundation is the SCCA Academy, an online learning management system used to keep real-life racing track officials up to date on the highest standards of race safety and officiating. Through this program, the SCCA Foundation is supporting the future of the best-trained corner workers and event officials in motorsport. You can support these efforts at www.sccafoundation.org.
The search is over. The most comprehensive league scoring solution is here, with the ability for multi-level championships, custom incident tracking, post-race time penalties, support for heats, drop weeks display, multi-car team scoring, advanced web widgets, rookie championships, a custom paint system, and load those results in seconds. Visit extremescoring.info today.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.